What's up guys, this is your favorite fanfic YouTuber, the Fanfic Majesty, and welcome to another amazing video. You can follow me on Patreon for exclusive stories. 16 Pi Chapter 376 Trying to remove Devil Fruit's ability. Bullfighting Arena. For unknown reasons, this place is wrapped in a layer of sadness. Cyrus didn't look back, he could feel his daughter's sadness, but he couldn't do anything about it. Very early on, when he just became a toy, he told people about his past and his true identity more than once. But no one believed him. Even his wife didn't believe him. Everyone regards him as a crazy toy, until the wife went out to look for food, was found by Doflamingo, and was brutally killed. When he arrived, he saw his beloved wife lying in a pool of cold blood with his own eyes. His last words were to let his father and husband, who had been forgotten by the world, bring the food she had found so hard to bring back to the flower field. Take it back to your young daughter, Rebecca. Until this moment, he still deeply remembered that it was raining and cold that day, but no matter how cold it was, no heart could be colder. The coldness that seemed to go deep into the bone marrow turned into a monstrous hatred, making him, who was turned into a doll who could not shed tears, cry, or express any emotions, feel for the first time that the world was so unfair. If it weren't for his daughter, he would never have endured until now, and he would have gone to find Doflamingo desperately. But it was also the daughter who saved his life and made him wait for Sorata. It's just that he still doesn't know who Sorata is. How? Sorata also didn't go to see Rebecca. There are so many sad things in this world. Beneath this bustling city, there are countless darkness that is even sadder than before. At least, Cyrus still has a daughter and has the opportunity to become a human being, and Rebecca is also accompanied by Cyrus, and she did not suffer any hardships in her childhood. But the countless families who have been turned into dolls are not so lucky. They are not as strong as Cyrus, unable to break free from the control of the sugar. They can only watch their beloved wives marry someone else again, they can only watch their young children become the children of others, and they can only watch helplessly, looking at. Monsieur Cyrus, you don't even ask me, hello. Speaking of this, Sorata smiled, stretched out his hand again and said with a smile, Mr. Cyrus, hello. As if with some magical power, Sorata's voice instantly dispelled the inexplicable sadness around, bringing Cyrus and Rebecca back to their senses. Cyrus stared at the big hand stretched out in front of him and quickly put away his weapon. He really didn't feel any malice in Sorata, but full of kindness. It would be really impolite to raise your weapon at Sorata again. Advertisement and Sorata also greeted him. Although there are many questions in his mind at the moment, those are all things to come later. He doesn't believe that Sorata, who knows his real identity and real name, appears here and finds him. It will be a coincidence. Putting the weapon back on his back, Cyrus raised his head to stare at Sorata, solemnly extended his right hand, and shook Sorata's hand, hello. Putting down his hands, he continued to ask, I don't know what this gentleman is called, and what is the purpose of coming here? He failed to recognize Sorata, because his identity at this moment is a wanted criminal who is wanted in Darius Rosa. Appearing in Darius Rosa is done quietly. It is impossible to go to the tavern in the city. He knew the previous news, but the news about Sorata was only in the last year, so he didn't know the identity of Sorata. Me? Sorata withdrew her hand, stood up straight, then brushed her right hand around her waist, raised the wine gourd, and raised her head to take a big sip. Then he lowered his head and replied to Cyrus, you can call me Sorata. Space is empty, space is too. Oh, the corner of the mouth of the soul in Cyrus' toy body twitched, and he said, Mr. Sorata, hello. Okay, Sorata nodded, and then returned to Cyrus' second question. As for what am I doing here? Having said that, he glanced at Rebecca, his gaze passed over Rebecca, and looked at the statue behind her. The corners of his mouth raised, and he said with a smile, of course I came to find the owner of this statue, Mr. Cyrus. He was not surprised at all when Sorata called out his identity. After all, he already knew it in his heart. He looked up at Sorata and then asked, then why is Mr. Sorata looking for me? Looking for you, of course. Sorata withdrew his gaze and looked down at the doll again, as if thinking of something. His brows frowned slightly, and then a special wave swayed. It was as if a stone was thrown into the real space, causing ripples in the space around the arena. The ripples grew rapidly, enveloping Sorata and the others, as well as Cyrus and Rebecca in an instant. Advertisement, this is. Holding the camera, Morgans entered Sorata's space domain for the first time. He raised his head and looked at the sky and the sun that hadn't changed. He turned his head and looked at the surroundings and the scene that hadn't changed. Surprise. Stealth? I saw a group of doll soldiers walking by outside, but I didn't see them as anything. Wrong. He raised his head again and looked at the sun in the sky. His brows were deeply frowned. This time he found something wrong. He didn't feel the glare of the sun when he lowered his head again and looked at Sorata. There was a hint of shock in his eyes. Different space. Is this the strength that Silver Hair has always relied on? It's really amazing. As the president of the World Economic News Agency, although his strength cannot be compared with the real powerhouses who are famous all over the world, he is not a small guy. Now he feels like he's in this space, and he's completely incapable of getting out. As long as Sorata wants to, he can die tragically in it in an instant. Sorata didn't take Morgan's shock very seriously. He just stared at Cyrus in front of him. The sudden use of the space domain, of course, was not to avoid the patrolling soldiers who happened to pass by outside, but he thought of his space domain, which was not something of this world at all. He wanted to see if he could isolate the breath of this world and let Cyrus recover. Devil fruit is incredible though. But he doesn't believe that this ability to change the shape of others can be restricted by the fruit ability in another world. If it is so powerful, then it can't be called devil fruit, but the fruit of law. Sure enough, after he isolated the outside world and completely separated his spatial domain from the outside world, a large number of silk threads gradually emerged from the body of the doll that Cyrus turned into in front of him. One end of these silk threads is connected to the void, as if born out of nothing, and the other end is connected to the body of the doll. And these threads are invisible to outsiders, and only Sorata's special eyes can see clearly in the space field. Chapter 377 The Legendary Swordsman in the Arena. He stretched out his hand, grabbed a silk thread, and squeezed lightly. Click. Only he could hear the sound of the thread snapping. In the eyes of outsiders, it was Sorata who stretched out his hand and raised it in the void. With a bang, the arm of the doll turned into a human arm. The arm was so big that Cyrus instantly lost his balance and fell to the ground. Before he could figure out what was going on, Sorata stretched out his hand, grabbed all the silk threads, and pinched them hard. Click. This time, the louder sound seemed to resound through the soul, and everyone here could hear it. However, no one cared about the source of the sound at the moment. Everyone stared at the one-legged man who had completely turned into a human on the ground in front of him. And the appearance of the one-legged man, if you look carefully, is actually very similar to the statue behind Rebecca. It's just that the statue is very young, but the man has a touch of vicissitudes after being baptized by the years. Father, father, father. The moment Cyrus recovered, Rebecca's memory was suddenly connected as if it had been fragmented, allowing her to recover all of Cyrus' memories in an instant. This time there was no numbness on her face, but real sadness appeared on her face. She stared at Cyrus, opened her mouth and said loudly, "Father." Then, regardless of the people around him, he took a step up and threw himself into the arms of Cyrus who had stood up. He hugged Cyrus' waist tightly with both hands, as if he was afraid of the person in his arms, disappeared in her memory again. She had no scruples, tears wet Cyrus' chest in an instant, bit her lips tightly, and let out a low moan. Saw Cyrus recovered. Sorata waved. The space domain disappeared instantly, and they reappeared in the outside world. Among them, Cyrus and Rebecca did not appear. Let them, father and daughter, have a good get-together. Sorata raised the wine gourd and took a swig. I didn't expect it to be him. Advertisement. Only then did Morgans remember who Cyrus was. He looked at the statue of Cyrus with a look of amazement, his eyes full of exclamation. President, do you know who he is? Okay, Morgans nodded. Others may not know who Cyrus is, but I happen to know. He went on to recount. Many years ago, Doris Rosa came up with a very powerful fencing technique. As he said that, he raised his head and glanced at the arena, and then said, "This swordsman is in this arena, with an unparalleled 3,000 victories, he became the hero of Doris Rosa." Could it be the middle-aged man just now? Everyone glanced at the statue, and a flash of understanding flashed in their eyes. Well, that's him. Morgans nodded. He is Cyrus. Later, because of his strength, he was invited by Doris Rosa's former king, Liku Dald III, to become the royal guard. And in a subsequent incident of saving the princess, the eldest daughter of King Liku at that time, Princess Scarlet, fell in love with him. In order to hide the truth from the people, King Riku Deldo III announced that Scarlet died of illness, and asked Scarlet and Cyrus to leave the palace to start a family together. What he said above is what most people in Doris Rosa know. And what follows is a secret. As for Rebecca, he didn't know that. He didn't expect that he would forget it too. It's amazing. After finishing speaking, Morgans raised his eyes and glanced at Sorata's back. Such a powerful fruit ability can be easily cracked by Sorata. After hearing Morgan's answer, everyone's faces showed exclamation. Kuina took a step forward, walked to the left of Sorata, reached out and grabbed Sorata's hand, then put his arm in her arms, looked at Sorata and asked, "Sorata, do you want Cyrus or Rebecca to be the leader? Take the civilians on the island and evacuate here." "Okay." Advertisement. Sorata nodded and said with a smile, "We will fight the 4 emperors later. It is not something these ordinary people can resist. Before that, it's better to evacuate the civilians on the island. Later we will go to Doflamingo's palace to completely resolve the toy matter," and these toys were suddenly released from control, and the people on the island also suddenly regained their memories. There will definitely be chaos, and someone will have to come out and take them to evacuate. Having said that, he stopped and looked at the gate of the arena. His eyes seemed to penetrate the thick iron gate, the thick orange wall, and landed on one of the rooms in the arena, holding a steel helmet, bare upper body, and a white-haired old man wearing a blue cloak. King Riku Dald III. As long as the commoners regain their memories and the countless underground toys that have changed back to their original state, King Liku can change his impression among the commoners in an instant and regain the trust he once had. With him, Cyrus and Rebecca, the chaos can be calmed down in an instant, and then the civilians can be evacuated here. You can't go to the sea, but you can go to the north of Doris Rosa, to Greenbit, which is only connected to Doris Rosa by a steel suspension bridge. Although 200 years ago, for unknown reasons, a group of ferocious fighting fish came there, and it was completely abandoned. But Cyrus knows the little people. As long as he restores his memory and rescues the little human princess and 500 little people in the man-made devil fruit factory in Doflamingo, he can let the little people take them through the castle surrounded by fighting fish, the suspension bridge connecting Doris Rosa to Greenbit. Don't think that the little people are small, just think they are weak. On the contrary, they are actually very powerful individually. At least better than ordinary humans. There are many special races in this world. Except for those who have been exterminated, each race is inherently stronger than humans. It's just that the human base is too large, occupying most of the world, so there will be countless strong people, and among these strong people, there will be monsters, real monsters that surpass the top of the world. I don't know if it's God's fairness. Although the special race is powerful in the sky, the upper limit of the day after tomorrow is not as good as that of the ordinary human race. The human race may be very ordinary innately, but they can truly reach the top of the world through continuous efforts. In general, each has its advantages. Withdrawing her gaze, Sorata turned her gaze to where Cyrus and Rebecca were standing just now. As his thoughts moved slightly, a layer of ripples appeared into space, and two black shadows gradually appeared in the originally empty space. Then the ripples disappeared, and Cyrus appeared in front of everyone holding Rebecca. The moment the two came out, they turned to look at Sorata. Looking at the young man who always had a gentle smile on his face, he took a step forward and bent over together. Thanks. Chapter 378. Another person under the sun. The father and daughter were facing a young man, bent over, and did not get up for a long time. Only when you are truly in despair, can you appreciate the excitement in their hearts after their reunion at this moment, and the gratitude to the person who saved them. Although they still don't know why the young man in front of him found them and why he wanted to save him, this doesn't affect their gratitude at the moment. Okay, get up. Sorata spoke softly. Then with a thought, he helped the father and daughter up. Cyrus and Rebecca felt a force they couldn't resist coming from below, and lifted them up forcefully, making them straighten up. Let's go. Sorata pulled Kuina, turned and walked towards the arena. While walking, he said, "What's the matter? I'll tell you all when I see the other one." The father and daughter looked at each other, then took a step and followed behind Sorata. Mr. Sorata, seeing Sorata stopped at the gate of the arena, Cyrus quickly said, "This is the territory of Shichibukai Doflamingo, and there are many guards inside." Okay. Sorata nodded, indicating that she knew. Then, under Cyrus' shocked gaze, he patted the front with his right hand across the air. An extremely oppressive sense of oppression came from the front of Sorata's palm. Then everyone saw a transparent palm composed of distorted space flying out of Sorata's palm. The palm of the hand swelled against the wind, and when it flew in front of the giant gate, it had already swelled to the same size as the giant gate. Then, boom, the huge door seemed to be hit by a boulder, and it was instantly dented, and then shattered into several pieces from the outside to the inside, breaking away from the shackles of the doorframe, and flying towards the inside. The loud noise alarmed the guards in the arena. Who dares to act presumptuously on the territory of our Don Quixote family? Teams of soldiers wearing armor and holding spears rushed out from the surrounding rooms and ran towards the gate. The appearance of these soldiers is the same as that of real soldiers, but the fierceness revealed from the bottom of their bones still reveals their identities as pirates. With King Riku's reign over, Doflamingo takes over. Advertisement. He silently, without anyone knowing, turned the original king's army and the guards of Darius Rosa into toys. And a large part of the toys in the underground weapons factory are actually the king's army of the original German Ries Rosa. Looking at the broken gate in front of him, Sorata waved his right hand. A gust of wind was generated out of thin air, easily blowing away the smoke and dust at the gate, and then Sorata took a step, and together with Kuina, walked into this historic arena first. The arena is circular, surrounded by steps, from the bottom layer, gradually upwards, filled with seats. In the middle is a huge flat arena. The arena is surrounded by a circle of water. If you look closely, you can see a huge black shadow looming across the water. That's Doflamingo. I didn't know if it existed before. Anyway, after Doflamingo appeared, there was it. It is a betta that is purposely bred in captivity for more exciting battles and to prevent players from escaping. As soon as Sorata and others entered the gate, they saw a group of soldiers holding weapons, waiting for them behind the gate. Who are you to make trouble in the arena of the great King Doflamingo? You are courting death. Sorata and the others were not given a chance to speak. They were soldiers, but in fact they were pirate soldiers. After seeing just a few little ghosts, they raised their weapons without hesitation and headed towards Sorata and Kuina, who were walking in the front of the crowd, stabbed over. Go to hell, brats. Only then did the pirates reveal their vicious aura. They seemed to have seen Sorata and Kuina, being pierced by their spears, crying continuously. There was a crazy twist on his face, and an extremely bloodthirsty red glow appeared in his eyes. They are all a group of pirates who do all kinds of evil and lawlessness. Even if they followed Doflamingo and became Darius Rosa's soldiers, it still couldn't change the evil in their bones. Humph. Sorata stared at the oncoming spear, frowned slightly, and then hummed softly. Following the exit of the voice, a domineering aura emerged from Sorata's body, not affecting the people behind him, but moving forward. Instantly swept across the bodies of the pirates. The bodies that made them rush forward seemed to have been immobilized by someone, and it seemed that time had stopped, and they froze in place for an instant. Then their eyes turned white, and their bodies seemed to lose all their strength in an instant, and they fell backwards. For a while, inside the gate, there was an endless sound of falling to the ground. Advertisement. The brow stretches. Sorata continued to move forward and walked up to a pirate who was blocking the way. He stretched out his foot, like kicking a ball, and kicked forward hard. Click. The sound of bones breaking was very ear-piercing in the aisle of this gate. The severe pain made the pirate wake up instantly. He opened his mouth and screamed, spewing out a mouthful of blood, arched his body, pushed the pirate behind him all the way, and fell into the pool in the middle of the arena. Cuckoo. Bubbles came, and then the countless black shadows under the water, like sharks smelling blood, rushed straight towards the pirates who fell into the water. There was no sound. Even if the pirate fell into the water, the pirate was already in a coma, so the betta fish that was rushed over in an instant were all torn apart, and the water was dyed red in a short while. Following Sorata's actions, the three of Ahua stepped forward and kicked all the pirates into the pool one by one, following Sorata's actions. Standing by the pool, everyone looked at the pool that had been stained red, but none of them showed any signs of pity. Not even Rebecca, who was 13 or 14. Not to mention recovering the memory. Even if she didn't recover the memory, she also knew that these guys who were apparently soldiers were actually pirates, subordinates of the man who killed her mother. Her hiding life since she was a child has made her not, and impossible to be, a simple little girl. The life and death she experienced in these years made her understand that not everyone can get sympathy. What's more, these were her enemies in the first place. Did something happen outside? Inside the arena, there are 4 doors, which are the 4 directions of the medium-sized arena in the arena. Inside the door are rows of steel cages. Some are empty, some have a room for several people, and some have a room for only one person. They are all wanted criminals of Doris Rosa, and there are some pirates who invaded the kingdom of Doris Rosa. They were brought here because the arena is special in Doris Rosa, where gladiatorial fights are often held here. And they are the performers here. To please Doflamingo, to please his men, to please the wealthy people of the island, and the nobles from other countries who visit here. In one of the iron cage rooms, an old man was sitting. The old man didn't make a fuss like the other pirates in the iron cage, nor did he discuss with them. He just sat quietly on the bench, cleaning the iron helmet in his hand, and a long sword without a blade. Chapter 379 Reunion. King Liku. No, he should be the gladiator, Ricky, at this moment. He was not caught here like other pirates, but came here on his own initiative. After he was taken from the throne by Doflamingo, his family members were successively hunted down by members of the Don Quixote family. With hatred for Doflamingo, he was determined to take revenge, but because he had nowhere to go, he went to the bullfighting arena and became a sword fighter under the pseudonym Ricky. In order to prevent the citizens from recognizing him, he has been fighting with a mask covering his eyes. This flash. So much time has passed. King Liku knew that with his power, not to mention seeking revenge from Doflamingo, but even wanting to meet Doflamingo and go to him was wishful thinking. But that flame of hatred made him reluctant to leave this world. So he can only paralyze himself through countless battles. Of course, there is also a test to see if you can break the arena record and let Doflamingo see him, just like he saw Cyrus before. Cyrus. As if remembering something, King Liku's face suddenly changed drastically. Cyrus, Cyrus, Cyrus. He kept chanting the name, and unprecedented fear appeared on his face. I can forget Cyrus. Bang, the helmet in his hand fell to the ground, and he reached out to grab the white hair on his head like a Super Saiyan man, with a trace of sadness in his eyes. Damn it, how could I forget you? It can make people forget another person, just like erasing from memory, from history, which reminded him of the toys on the island. Damn it, the toys on this island aren't those people whose past has been erased. At this moment, he thought of many things. Why did a large number of toys suddenly appear on the island, and why did he have no information about these toys in his memory? Why does he have the memory of his daughter and granddaughter, but not the slightest memory of his son-in-law? He was still suspicious before, but after fleeing for a long time, he gradually forgot about these things, and finally no longer cared about them at all. But now, the memory that suddenly appeared in his mind made him think of many things. No, I want to go out, get out of here. He wasn't captured, so he could leave the arena without anyone stopping him. Advertisement now. He just wants to know why Cyrus suddenly appeared in his mind, and does it mean that Cyrus has lifted the seal under the Doflamingo family? Also, now that you want to understand what toys mean. As the former king of Doris Rosa, he can no longer let Doflamingo play with his citizens so wantonly. Didn't think about it before because it was Doris Rosa's own thing, but now. He went to other countries to ask for help, to Marine for help, and even at the expense of dignity, to the world government for help. He didn't believe that such a dark matter, the world government, Marine and other countries would ignore it. Today is Doris Rosa, tomorrow it could be any country. Thinking of this, he bent down to pick up the helmet on the ground, stood up, put the helmet on his head, and covered his old face, but as long as he appeared in Doris Rosa, no one would not recognize it. At this moment, he found a row of shadows on the ground. Judging from the shape of the shadows, they were people. At this time, the guards of the arena should not come here, so who would it be? Lifting his head, through the eye sockets of the helmet, he saw several figures standing outside his room. Because of the backlight, he couldn't see clearly for a while. It wasn't until he got used to the light that he could see clearly. Those were 2 very young boys and girls, and there were several tall figures standing behind them. That is, his body trembled violently. In the crowd, he saw the figure that disappeared from his memory and suddenly reappeared today. And beside the figure, the little girl, in his perception, is so familiar, yet so strange. Is that Rebecca? Doflamingo hadn't seen the granddaughter, nor his daughter, since he captured Doris Rosa. He'd thought they'd all been hunted down by the Don Quixotes. Unexpectedly, we could meet again today. Tears broke through the shackles of the eye sockets in an instant, but outsiders couldn't see it because of the steel helmet, but through the hole in the helmet, the wet eyes could still be seen. It seems to have sensed something. Maybe it is the familiarity between relatives, maybe it is the blood of a loved one. So when King Liku looked at the father and daughter also looked at the man in the room whose head was completely covered by the helmet. Needless to say, they could also recognize the man in the house from that familiar aura. Father, Grandpa. The father and daughter stepped forward quickly, pushed open the iron door that was not locked like other iron cage rooms, and walked into the room. Good, good, good. Wang Liku said hello 3 times, then reached out and took off his helmet, and hugged the father and daughter together. Advertisement. Let's go. Let's go to other places to see. There's a very interesting place here. Sorata glanced at the 3 people in the room, knowing that they had a lot to say, and gave them time and space, turned around and walked inside. An interesting place? Everyone withdrew their gazes from King Riku and the 3, turned around and followed Sorata and Kuina. Hey, who are you? Why haven't I seen you? It can't be a new gladiator. Looking at the age of the 2 leading brats, they're too young. That's right, that's right. Hey, brat, I won't show mercy when the time comes. Obviously, the pirates in the room along the way regarded Sorata and others as people who came to participate in the gladiatorial fight. Sorata and the others ignored the uneasy pirates who were locked in the cage. Ignore their yelling and continue walking inside. Finally stood in front of a completely closed iron door. Looking at the iron gate, curiosity appeared in everyone's eyes. What's in it? Without keeping everyone waiting, Sorata slowly drew out Zon Kong with his right hand, then raised Zon Kong high, and waved lightly to the right at the iron gate. Cold light flashed. The thick iron door made a pop sound like jelly, and was easily cut open by the light of a knife. Without support, the 2 iron gates fell backwards abruptly. The ground shook. The rumbling sound was exceptionally clear in this aisle, causing the pirates behind them to stop talking for an instant. Only then did they realize that Sorata and his gang might be different from what they had imagined. It's been a long time, and they haven't seen a single guard. Judging from the sound now, this group of people should come here to cause sabotage. Hey, brat, let us go out. I have a treasure in the sea. As long as you let me out, I will tell you the address. As if seeing the hope of going out, a pirate slammed on the iron railing, trying to squeeze his head out of the gap in the iron railing. He tilted his head, widened his eyes, and yelled into the depths of the aisle. At this time, more pirates also wanted to understand the reason. Some of them, like this pirate, lured them with money, and of course some threatened them and shouted loudly. Sorata and others ignored the voice behind them. Although Doflamingo is not a good person, the pirates caught here by Doflamingo are not good people either. Let them fend for themselves here. Chapter 380 Toy Garbage Mountain. Wait for the dust in front of you to disperse. Sorata stepped on the iron door and walked into the room. It went dark, then lit up. It was a dark, circular hollow room. There is a circle of aisles around the room, and the periphery of the aisle is surrounded by guardrails. Outside the guardrail, there is a dark and deep hole. This is... The people who followed Sorata lay on the guardrail, their heads looking down into the deep hole. Sorata, what's down here? Kuina lay prone on the guardrail. A flash of lightning flashed in his eyes, and he sensed that there were many people below. Is it here? A cold light flashed in Sorata's eyes. He lowered his head to stare at the void, and said in a deep voice, "This is where the arena disposes of waste." Waste? Everyone was surprised. The waste in the arena should be those pirates who lost arms and legs after defeat and could no longer please the audience. Although it is waste, waste also has value. Sorata withdrew her gaze, turned around, leaned her back on the guardrail, and looked at the 3 King Liku who came from outside the door. The corners of his mouth raised, and he smiled lightly. I thought you guys were going to talk for a long time, but I didn't expect you to come here so soon. King Riku looked at Sorata's young face, and a bright light appeared in his old eyes. It was a light of hope and a light of gratitude. At this time, he didn't feel sentimental with Cyrus and Rebecca, and soon learned everything from the father and daughter, and then brought the father and daughter here directly. Mr. Sorata, can you tell us about your purpose now? Cyrus stepped forward, looked at Sorata, and asked in a serious tone. Ha ha, Sorata laughed. Actually, you don't have to be so serious. He looked at the serious 3, and then stated his purpose. Advertisement, I came to you 3 because a big battle will break out here later. You can stop the civilians in Doris Rosa and evacuate here. Battle, evacuate? Surprised expressions appeared on the faces of the 3 of them. Mr. Sorata, can you tell us about the war? And, in our current capacity, the civilians of Doris Rosa will not listen to us. Speaking of this, King Liku's straight waist seemed to be bent a little, and his spirit was much lowered. The commoners of Doris Rosa used to trust him, but now, let alone organize the evacuation of the civilians, as long as he goes out and shows his true colors, the commoners who trusted him in the past can subdue him in an instant and go to their new king Doflamingo to receive him. Reward. The big battle, 4 emperors will come here later, come here to fight with me. 4 emperors? If it was surprise before, it is panic now. None of the 3 are ignorant people, of course they know what 4 emperors means. I also know what it means for a strong like the 4 emperors to fight in their Doris Rosa. 4 emperors, that's Sorata who can fight the 4 emperors. Thinking of this, the 3 looked up at Sorata with shock in their eyes. So young to fight the 4 emperors. As if knowing what the three of them were thinking, Sorata continued, as for whether I can fight the four emperors, you don't have to worry. There is also the issue of your identities. After I solve the person who turned the people of Darius Rosa into toys, you will have memories and countless civilians who have turned into human bodies again. You will be able to get Darius Rosa again. Reese Rosa Civilian Trust. This. Sorata talked a lot, and the three of them were a little confused. It was King Liku who came back to his senses first. He took a step forward, grabbed Sorata's shoulders, and said excitedly, say, you can solve the person who turned the people into toys. Okay. Sorata didn't care about King Liku's hand holding his shoulder because of excitement. He could feel how nervous the old man was at the moment. He stared into the old man's eyes, nodded affirmatively, and then said with a chuckle, don't talk about the guy who turned people into dolls. Even Doflamingo will be solved together later. All right. Sorata reached out to push away the old man's hand, turned around and looked at the hollow below, and said, I know you may not believe it now, but it doesn't matter. I'm just here to inform you. There may be chaos here later. I hope you can stand up and let the chaos below subside, and then take the people below and the people on the island to evacuate to the nearby greenbit. Advertisement. After finishing speaking, Sorata ignored the three people behind him and took a step forward. As he stepped forward, the guardrail in front of him twisted automatically and then disconnected, allowing a passage. He continued to move forward, and just like that, under the shocked eyes of the three of King Liku, he stood in the sky above the hollow. Let's go. Below is Doflamingo's weapons factory. From here, you can go directly to the underground of the palace. He stepped on the void step by step, just like stepping on a real ladder. Following his footsteps, layers of ripples appeared in the void, and the ripples spread out, turning into transparent but still visible stairs to the void. This is for Sorata's convenience to make the void appear. Otherwise, they would not dare to step into the void at all. Amazing. Morgan stepped on the void stairs, looked down at the feet, the transparent and twisted space stairs like glass. His face was amazed. The three of King Liku looked at each other, even though they had a lot of doubts in their hearts. But now the appearance of Sorata is also their greatest hope. Regardless of whether what Sorata said is true or not, they must hold on to this hope, even if it costs their lives. Nodding firmly, the three raised their feet, followed the crowd, stepped on the void stairs, and gradually disappeared into the dim room. As the crowd descended, they stepped onto the bottom of the black hole in a short while. It's completely dark here now, only the garbage Yamanaka in front of me, and the shining blue light that emerges from time to time, so that everyone can see the surrounding scene clearly. This is a toy factory, a dump for broken toys. Without waiting for everyone to ask questions, Sorata answered. The partners are also used to it, and Sorata seems to know everything. Although Morgans and Firebird are both journalists, they don't know much about Sorata. They thought they got the map here before coming here, so they were not surprised that Sorata was familiar with this place. As for Lika Wong and the other three, they just met, so of course they don't know why Sorata is so familiar with this place. Looking at the rubbish mountain in front of them, the eyes of King Liku and the other three flashed heavy sadness. Now they already know what a toy is. In their eyes, the broken toys on this rubbish mountain are not toys, but real people. It's just that these people are now turned into toys, and the toys are completely broken and turned into garbage. Looking at the mountain of garbage, to be honest, even Sorata was a little surprised. He didn't expect that even if the toy was broken, the ability of Tongshu fruit could not be released. Chapter 381 Arrangement. Everyone did not stop at the garbage mountain. The only way to enter here is to go to the real toy factory. Sorata came here mainly to let Morgans take a good picture of everything here. When he arrived at the toy factory, he would let them stay here and let Ahua and others go to the upper floor of the toy factory to rescue the little people there. And he and Kuina, of course, went straight to Doflamingo. He didn't know how soon Kaido would come, but at that guy's flying speed, he didn't think it would be too long, so he had to deal with Granos first, and let King Liku and the others evacuate first. Don't wait until Kaido arrives, this place has just been evacuated. Then he fights with hands and feet tied up, so he might as well use the space blade to try to kill Kaido quickly. But in this way, the purpose of exercise cannot be achieved. He fought the four emperors mainly to temper the armament haki and the conqueror's haki. Kaido is a good teacher. 4 sticks. With only 4 sticks, Luffy completed a transformation that no one in this world could complete. From a person who can only hang out with Admiral, he has become a peak powerhouse who can defeat 4 emperors like Kaido. With one blow, Luffy was stunned, and he was sent to Rabbit Prison. Luffy met another teacher in the prison, and learned the emission that can break Kaido's defense. 2 sticks. Comprehend the conqueror's winding. 3 sticks, allowing Luffy to master the conqueror's winding. 4 sticks, this one directly awakened Luffy. Compared with Teacher Kaido, Teacher Rayleigh is like a mediocre teacher who only taught Luffy hockey for 2 years. Ha ha. This is just a joke. Without 2 years of precipitation and a solid foundation, Luffy would not be able to achieve an exaggerated leap in strength after going to sea for a long time. Who? As soon as they walked out of the passage, 2 pirates with long whips blocked everyone's way. Behind them, everyone could see countless toys carrying boxes and countless toys working on the assembly line. Of course, there is also a pirate with a whip just like the one in front of him. Ignoring the two, Sorata moved on. Advertisement, you. The two of them just wanted to go forward, ready to swing the whip at Sorata and others they didn't know, but as Sorata approached, the two suddenly felt that the young kid in front of them turned into a boundless beast in an instant, and then their eyes widened. Actually passed out directly. Out the aisle. It suddenly opened up. This is an incomparably huge underground space, and the end cannot be seen at a glance. Countless toys work here. In addition to the roar of the machine, there are only the angry curses of pirates from time to time. Toy, don't say a word. In the eyes of the toys, Sorata couldn't feel any emotional fluctuations, as if they had really become toys, dead toys. The atmosphere here is very depressing, so depressing that Sorata stands here, feeling uncomfortable all over. So the moment he walked out of the void, he stared, and the Conqueror's hockey swept across the entire space in an instant. Then there were countless falls to the ground. Those were countless pirates just like the two pirates who blocked them just now. He didn't have stun toys, thinking that these toys would return to human form later and leave here. After finishing all this, Sorata turned to look at the three of King Riku. Okay, let's part here, you guys wait here for a while, I'll go up and deal with Doflamingo. Oh, by the way, when you go up later, meet the little people on the second floor, and they will take you across the suspension bridge to Greenbit. Little people? There was a flash of memory in King Riku's eyes, and he nodded quickly. Okay, Mr. Sorata. As he said that, he bent down to Sorata. Thank you, Mr. Sorata, for everything you have done to Darius Rosa. Our Riku family, and countless citizens of Darius Rosa, will always remember it in our hearts. After a short contact, whether it is the Void Ladder or this sudden appearance of Conqueror's hockey, all this made them realize that Sorata is a real strongman. Such strongmen say to tackle Doflamingo, they believe it. And after the Four Emperors' War, they also believed. Okay, advertisement. Sorata didn't help King Riku, so he accepted his gratitude, then turned to look at Morgans, and said with a smile. You guys just pat the darkness here more. As for Doflamingo, I'll subdue him until you come up and shoot. Yes, Mr. Sorata. Morgans and Firebird were not dissatisfied with Sorata's arrangement. They knew that Sorata asked them to come here to expose the darkness of Darius Rosa. After knowing that there are two Four Emperors coming here, they are not so interested in the news of Doflamingo, the Shichibukai. After all, how could Shichibukai fight against the Four Emperors? At this moment, a lot of exclamations suddenly broke out in the toy factory. This is the voice of the toys. For some reason, they were guards who were proud just now, but now they all fell to the ground and passed out. Sorata ignored the dolls here, and took his friends up the elevator to the second floor of the man-made Devil Fruit Factory. Although due to the absence of Guy and the raw material sat of Guy, the work here has not started yet, but the little people were caught by Doflamingo early on and imprisoned here. Sorata left Ahua and the others here and told them to come up after they had rescued the little people and explained the situation to them. The moment he came up, he swept across the factory with his knowledge. Except for Senor Peak, who is known as a real man and has the ability to play fruit, there is no superpower. Although this guy's love is touching, but like most pirate bastards in this world, any fate is his own fault. Although touching, it is not worthy of sympathy. Scoundrel, no matter what, go to hell and repent. After that, without stopping, he took Kuina and boarded the elevator to the top floor here, which is the Palace Height. Palace Heights. Doflamingo led the way, followed by Diamandi, the family's top cadre, and dragged pole. Further behind stood the cadres such as Granos, Yora, Mahabas, and Rauji. Everyone stared at the elevator in front of them with serious faces. They were recruited by Diamante to the high ground of the palace, and they knew that the silver-haired gang was coming. Due to Doflamingo's control over Darius Rosa and the fact that Sorata's gang did not hide their whereabouts, they already knew that Sorata and the others had gone to the arena. Through the ubiquitous monitoring phone bugs in the underground factory, of course they also know that Sorata and others have arrived at the factory, and are now in the elevator in front of them, coming here. Different from the seriousness of others, in the crowd, a beautiful woman in a flamenco dance costume, with a red flower on her head, long brown black hair, and beautiful light brown pupils, stood in front of her. In his eyes, there was an excitement that outsiders could not detect. Chapter 382. Brother Ming, whose mentality is a bit broken. The woman's name is Violet. The Don Quixote family belongs to the killer codename Plum, Triple Army. But she didn't join the Don Quixote family voluntarily. Her real name is Violet, and her real identity is the princess of the kingdom of Darius Rosa. 7 years ago, Doflamingo was captured when he led the Don Quixote pirates into the palace of Darius Rosa when he controlled Liku Dold III to carry out a massacre in Darius Rosa. Because Doflamingo took a fancy to her devil fruit ability, Violet begged Doflamingo to save her father's life, and then chose to join the Don Quixote pirates to work for Doflamingo, and assumed the alias, Violet, as a killer in the Don Quixote family. If it weren't for her, King Liku would have been killed by Doflamingo long ago. For a long time, King Liku thought that he was hiding well. In fact, Doflamingo knew that he was in the arena. But King Liku had been lurking all this time, and did not come out to make trouble, so Doflamingo looked at Violet's face, and ignored this ant that could be crushed to death at any time. Just when Doflamingo led the family cadres and stood at the door of the elevator, ready to fight. Ding! The elevator in front of him suddenly stopped. The huge iron door slid to the right, revealing two young figures inside. Yo! So many people greet us. Sorata was the first to step out of the elevator. Beside him, Kuina followed. Silver hair, blue hair. Doflamingo's eyes swept over the two of them, and stayed on Sorata. No one knew what his eyes behind the sunglasses looked like, but he could hear the pressure on him from his serious tone. Foo 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 foo. The abrupt laughter blew away the tense atmosphere that seemed to be condensed into reality. Doflamingo opened his mouth and laughed loudly. Welcome to you too. I have been in love with you for a long time. Foo 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 foo. He didn't ask why Sorata came here. He is not a fool. His most important task now is to hold Sorata until Kaido arrives. If he clashes with the two little devils in front of him now, he may not be able to persist until Kaido's arrival. Oh, Sorata stared at Doflamingo with his head tilted, with the corners of his mouth raised, and smiled softly. Have you been in love for a long time? Yup. Advertisement. Doflamingo opened his hand and laughed loudly. Who doesn't know that you dared to risk the disgrace of the world? Even dared to kill those stupid pigs, celestial dragons. After he finished speaking, a look of admiration appeared on his face. This is not fake. He really admires Sorata's courage to ignore celestial dragons and kill them if they say they will kill them. The four emperors are very powerful. Kings landing New World, in this sea, they're true emperors. But it is impossible for them to kill celestial dragons. After encountering them, although they will not detour like ordinary pirates, they cannot take the initiative to go up. At their level, they are not as ignorant as ordinary pirates, and only they can know the real power of the world government. I also know who the real king of this world and this sea is. If you really offend the world government, even if they are the four emperors of King's Landing New World, they will all die. This is an undisputed fact. After all, the world has been suppressed for 800 years, and the ghost knows how much power the world government hides. The four emperors have all reached the pinnacle of this world. Although they have never seen these powers, they can more or less guess. They weren't Sorata, with his casual jumping space teleportation, or his small size. Therefore, although they are not afraid of celestial dragons, they will not provoke them easily. After all, they are not one person, but a group of people, or a group of people with a fixed sight. Therefore, even a lunatic like Big O would not kill a celestial dragons for no reason. That's why Doflamingo admires the boldness of the brat in front of him. And after killing the celestial dragons, it has been more than a month, and nothing has happened, which is enough to prove the strength of the kid in front of him, and it can also prove that the world government is afraid of Sorata. However, what he didn't know was that it wasn't that the world government didn't take action, but that the world government took action and dispatched their strongest force for Sorata, but they couldn't do anything to get Sorata. In fact, in the state of a month ago, continuing to fight Tianlong, Sorata and his group may be fine, but the civilians in Kokolludo will basically be completely wiped out by the aftermath of their battle. This is also the reason why Sorata did not force Tianlong to stay at that time. It's not that he doesn't want to, but there are some things that he can't be truly ruthless. With his physical strength at that time, he could indeed block Tianlong's shelling again, but he couldn't block the aftermath of another explosion. IM didn't want to fight anyway, so he just followed the trend. Advertisement. Although Doflamingo is very powerful, it has not yet been able to know the news that only a few people in the marine and world government know. So he didn't know who caused the crack that spanned the entire world a month ago. Naturally, I didn't know that the world government had already made a move. Celestial dragons. Sorata stepped forward and walked towards Doflamingo. This guy's 3-meter height is actually much taller than him and Kuina, but as Sorata approached, a strong pressure pressed on him, making Doflamingo bend over involuntarily. This is... Unable to keep smiling anymore, Doflamingo's complexion completely gloomy. Under the pressure, he raised his head, with veins popping out of his forehead, and his eyes under the sunglasses stared at Sorata's slightly rotating blue like a starry sky. Pupil. Not Conqueror's hockey, but real pressure. He had to bend over, not to mention the cadres behind him, except for the sugar that Violet and Sorata had deliberately let go. Everyone else fell to their knees with a bang. Without even looking at the ants behind Doflamingo, Sorata walked up to Doflamingo, stared at his sunglasses, as if seeing through his sunglasses, saw his real eyes, and taunted. You guys are celestial dragons? So hate celestial dragons, why don't you kill Marijoy back? Having said that, Sorata's eyes froze, and a stronger pressure acted on Doflamingo. Although this guy hates celestial dragons, he cares more about the identity of celestial dragons than anyone else, which is very contradictory. You, drenched in sweat, Doflamingo raised his head stubbornly, his legs trembling uncontrollably. Kaka. The ground under his feet was like a spiderweb, cracked inch by inch. Is this the power of the brat in front of you? It's so scary. He really can't compare with 4 emperors, and he may not even be able to take over Kaido's stick, but he is not a small role. In Shichibukai, he is confident that he should be the strongest one except for the pervert Hawkeye and Big Bear. Ordinary pirates would not be taken seriously by him. But that's it, just with Sorata standing in front of him, he couldn't bear it, the weird pressure emanating from Sorata. What the hell is this monster? At this time, Doflamingo, to be honest, was a little bit depressed. Chapter 383. Laughing. Palace Heights. Doflamingo, who was bent over, put his hands on his knees, supporting himself tightly, not letting himself fall to his knees. He is such a proud person. Even if he dies, it is impossible for him to kneel down to anyone. Even if he is forced, it is impossible. It is impossible for him to kneel. The cadres behind him are not as strong as him. The first time the Sorata space domain enveloped this place, they directly fell to their knees. Even the top cadres Torbol and Diamante are no exception. Although they exerted all their strength, the pressure like the sky falling made them unable to even move under this pressure, so how could they stand up? They looked up and stared at the young figure standing in front of Doflamingo with horror in their eyes. Without doing anything, just this pressure they couldn't understand wiped them out. Same idea as Doflamingo, they also want to yell, "What the hell is this monster?" In the crowd, Violet looked in shock at the kneeling cadres around him, the cadres he had looked up to in the past, and the ultimate hope burst out in their eyes. Just now he also followed Doflamingo and others, and saw the picture from the underground surveillance phone bug. Of course, he also saw King Liku, saw the brother-in-law Cyrus who suddenly appeared in his mind, and saw the strange but familiar little niece Rebecca. So she is grateful to Sorata and the others. She is not as closed as King Liku and Cyrus, of course she knows Sorata's group. Seeing Doflamingo's seriousness earlier, she certainly hopes that Sorata's group can defeat Doflamingo and save Doris Rosa. However, with her current strength, it is impossible to understand how big the difference is between the strong. In her opinion, Doflamingo is already the most powerful existence in this world. Having lived in the Don Quixote family for so many years, she knows better than anyone how terrifying this family is. Her previous idea was to take advantage of the conflict between Sorata's group and the Don Quixote family to fight with all her life to help Sorata defeat Doflamingo. The opportunity was at hand, and she didn't want to wait any longer, and she didn't want to be the killer she was very resistant to. However, no matter how much she imagined, she never imagined that such a thing would happen. That man, the man who terrified her and brought countless tragedies to Doris Rosa, couldn't stand up straight in front of Sorata. This is too incredible. Violet covered her mouth with her hands, her lips trembled, and mist instantly filled her light brown pupils. No one knew how she had survived these 7 years. In the past 7 years, she clearly knew where her father was, but for his safety, she didn't even dare to see him. She'd waited so long for this moment that she'd become a real killer with the Don Quixote family. As if sensing Violet's emotions, Sorata tilted her head, looked away from Doflamingo, and looked behind him at Violet in the crowd. Advertisement, with Sorata's eyes gone, Doflamingo could clearly feel the pressure relieved. Not the physical stress relief, but the soul. Stared at by those blue pupils, Doflamingo even felt that he was going to disappear in this world in an instant. It's so frightening. So as soon as Sorata looked away from his body, he felt that his body was obviously lighter, and even the pressure that made him unable to straighten his waist seemed to have adapted to it at this moment. But even so, he didn't dare to move, because next to Sorata, Kuina was staring at him. The sharp edge that seemed to cut through the world made him feel that as long as he moved, he would face the lightning strike. Before meeting, he felt that with his strength, even if he was not Sorata's opponent, he could still fight Zhou Zan for a while. But after meeting, this idea disappeared in an instant. Even with his pride, he had to admit that at this moment, when facing Sorata, he might not be able to take a single move. As for Kuina, he feels strong, but not out of reach. Although very passive at this time, it has not yet reached the time of complete despair. As long as Kaido comes, he can get out of trouble. No matter what, be patient first, big brother. Just then, a little girl ran out behind Torbol. The little girl ran up to Sorata quickly, with a look of fear on her face, as if she had been kidnapped and now rescued. Granulated sugar. Whether it was Doflamingo or the cadres behind him, looking at the little girl's back, there was excitement in the depths of their eyes at this moment. They didn't know why Granos wasn't under pressure, but they thought it must be caused by Sorata on purpose. With Granu's ability, although I don't know if I can turn silver hair into a toy, but as long as silver hair is on guard, maybe I can really do it. Oh, Sorata could see the anxiety in Violet's eyes. She wanted to open her mouth to remind him, but Sorata smiled at her and shook her head slightly. Then he looked down at Granu, seeing the cautiousness on her little face and the excitement after being rescued. A gleam of amusement flashed in her eyes. Advertisement. He squatted down, looked at Granu and smiled. Little sister, were you brought here by this group of people? Since the other party wants to act, he will satisfy the other party. He also wants to try the bug-like ability of Tongshu Fruit. This is his space domain. Even if he really turns himself into a toy, with his omnipotent ability in this space, he can break free instantly. And his hockey is so strong, he can't believe that sugar can really turn him into a toy. If it was such a bug, the world government would have come to seize this fruit long ago, and then went to destroy the 4 emperors. Granos looked at Sorata innocently, and said with a look of fear, "These bad guys caught me." As he spoke, he looked at Sorata expectantly, and asked, "Big brother, can you take me home?" Haha. Sorata laughed and said, "Of course it's no problem." As he spoke, he stretched out his hand and touched the head of the sandy beach. At this moment, time seemed to stand still, and everyone held their breath, watching Sorata's falling palm intentionally or unintentionally. In front of Sorata, Granos' head was blocked by Sorata's hand. On that young face in the shadows, under the lowered eyelids, in the pupils, the excitement of ultimate emerged. This is the pinnacle of power in the world. Haven't tried it before, but now. As the big hand fell, the excitement in her eyes became more and more intense. Come on, come closer, come closer. The big warm hands covered Sasuke's little head without hesitation. At this moment, Granos laughed, Doflamingo laughed, and the cadres behind him laughed. Only Kuina and Violet were not smiling. Kuina believed in Sorata from beginning to end. Violet was afraid that what had just come to hope would now turn to darkness again. However, Sorata hasn't changed a bit over time. This time no one laughed. Instead Violet and Kuina laughed in relief. Mocking. Chapter 384 Fear. How is this possible? Granu and the Cadres all look disbelieving. Only Doflamingo vaguely knows the answer. Granos' ability is indeed very strong. Even if he is undefended, he may be hit. But that's just him. He knows that hockey, the pinnacle of the world, is no longer in the same dimension as them. In other words, the body of the world's top powerhouse also surpassed most people's cognition. This kind of physical strength in hockey, even if it is not fortified, the protection mechanism that the body automatically rises after encountering a crisis can break the ability of most devil fruits in this world. At his level, of course, he knows the importance of hockey. It is absolutely impossible to become the world's top powerhouse simply by relying on fruit ability. But with hockey, it can be done. Among the known pirates, the most powerful one, Roger, and the strongest known marine Garp, are all hockey strong, not devil fruit strong. Although devil fruit is powerful, it also has a fatal weakness. In this world where most of the world is water, this weakness is impossible for anyone to ignore. Even if it is as strong as the four emperors, once it is locked by Seastone, although it can still maintain its combat power, it is impossible to be the same as it was at its peak. And in the sea, it is even more so. Therefore, although he was a little surprised by Granos' ability to fail in front of Sorata, he was more disappointed. If Granos can take Sorata down, he won't have to wait for Kaido. However, obviously his idea failed to come true. Although Sorata is young, his physical fitness is a real monster. Therefore, as soon as Granu's ability came out, he was immediately blocked by the hockey breath that rose automatically from his body. Even if he let go of the infinite space outside the skin and let the sugar really touch him, but the countless silk threads rising from the body of the sugar in his sight, will be automatically snapped as soon as it reaches his hand. Little sister, you look surprised. Sorata withdrew her hand and stared down at Sasuke's eyes. In the blue pupils, the nebula slowly rotated, and then a cold light emerged. He's going to kill me. At this moment, Xiao Tang's young body suddenly froze in place, unable to move anymore. Advertisement under the gaze of these eyes, she felt that her soul had left her body and entered the real starry sky. Up and down, left and right, it's all dark, and in the void in front of it, a pair of eyes that cover everything occupy the entire starry sky. And she is now under these eyes. This feeling, like facing a real god, made her soul tremble. Give her face. Outside, Sorata looked at Sasuke, whose eyes were completely lifeless, and touched his chin with his right hand. Don't think that Granos is a little girl just because she looks like a little girl. In fact, she is almost 20 years old this year, and she is a veritable older loli. Whether it's decent or not, it's death. Sorata put down his hand and stared at Granu, with murderous intent in his eyes, then reached out and patted Granu. As his palm fell, the space around the sugar fluctuated violently like boiling water. During the space distortion, the sugar gradually shrank and shrunk. When Sorata's palm fell, the sugar had completely disappeared in Sorata's palm. At this moment, the air on the rooftop seemed to have suddenly cooled down. Doflamingo and the Cadres behind him stared at Sorata as if they were looking at a devil. What the hell is this? Sorata ignored them. He stood up, stretched out his hand that was holding on to the sugar, palm up, opened it, and then blew lightly forward. I saw the white ashes fluttering in the wind, like falling snow, gradually freezing the souls of all those who saw it. At this moment, not to mention Doflamingo and his men, even Violet looked at Sorata with a trace of horror. God, or the devil, this is the voice of everyone here. Even with Doflamingo's tough heart, this moment also gave birth to panic. Looking at the white powder floating from Sorata's palm, he seemed to be back to the night that changed his life, back to the night when the pirates hung him above the city gate. This moment gradually overlaps with that moment. The difference, however, is that at that moment his hatred and fear inspired the Conqueror's haki, allowing him to be rescued. At that moment, facing Sorata, who was thousands of times stronger than the pirate at that time, what would he use to escape? Violet. Advertisement. Sorata raised her head and looked at Violet, who was like a flower. Violet. Seeing her standing there stupidly, Sorata yelled again, this time with a bit of momentum, although not loud, but in Violet's ears, it was deafening. Ah! Violet came back to her senses in an instant. She hurriedly put down her hands, raised her head, and looked at Sorata with a trace of fear. Mr. Silverhair, what can I do? Looking at the woman whose face turned pale, Sorata shook his head helplessly. Obviously, the woman was frightened by his method of killing just now. He didn't say much, and said directly, your father is in the weapon factory below, you should go down and help too. The moment he killed Granos, he felt that it started from the underground of the palace heights, radiated outward like an explosion, and spread to the entire island in an instant, causing Rosa to go into complete chaos. This is also impossible. The couple who were having an intimate meal just now suddenly discovered that the woman has a husband and the man has a wife, so it's not a big mess. Even with the prestige of King Liku, it may not be able to solve this chaos for a while. So one more Violet, who knows the Don Quixote family very well, might be able to solve the chaos faster, and then evacuate Rosa as soon as possible. Looking at this silly woman, still standing there, Sorata had to emphasize her tone, and said again, the four emperors are coming soon. If you don't solve the chaos quickly and evacuate here, maybe the kingdom of Rosa will be destroyed. I have to follow the battle with the four emperors and follow this island into the sea. Ah, Violet was fully awake this time. A blush emerged from her pale face, and she bowed to Sorata in salute. Thank you for the reminder. Mr. Silverhair, your great kindness, the Liku family, and Doris Rosa will always be in my heart. Yeah, Sorata nodded and said gently, go down. Okay, Mr. Silverhair. Violet straightened up, nodded to Kuina, and then quickly walked towards the elevator. It disappeared here in a short while. As soon as Violet left, the roof of the palace fell silent instantly. Diamante and other cadres, even if they were kneeling on the ground under the pressure at this moment, they still endured it. They didn't dare to breathe too much, and they didn't dare to look up at Sorata. This guy is a monster. The method of erasing a person in an instant made them completely terrified. Chapter 385 Membrane. See Violet disappear in the elevator. Sorata then turned around, looked at Kuina, and asked, how about it, do you want to fight this guy? This guy? Kuina stared at Doflamingo, an electric arc flashed in her eyes, obviously with her combative personality, she still wanted to fight Doflamingo very much. But thinking of the upcoming Charlotte Linlin, she still shook her head, withdrawing the fighting spirit and arc in her eyes. Forget it. Although I feel that this guy is also very strong, he hasn't reached the point where I can completely let go and fight. I better save my energy and wait for Charlotte Linlin. Well, that's good too. Sorata nodded, looking back at Doflamingo. At this time Doflamingo also gritted his teeth, resisting the pressure, and looked at him. Well, she's quite stubborn. Seeing Doflamingo's attitude of refusing to kneel, the corners of Sorata's mouth turned up, showing a cruel smile on his face. Then his eyes narrowed. Click, thunder from the void. An extremely strong aura, like the king of all beasts, emerged from Sorata. The momentum bonus brought by Conqueror's Haki made him a real devil in the eyes of the Don Quixote family cadres at this moment. Don't be too arrogant, silver-haired brat. Doflamingo glared at Sorata now too. Even if his aura was at a disadvantage, even if he was so pressured that he couldn't straighten up at the moment, even if he was frightened by Sorata's unknown killing method. But who is he? He is Shichibukai, Heavenly Yaksha, Celestial Dragons, King of Doris Rosa, True King, Doflamingo. Boom, two strands of Conqueror's Haki collided, creating a strong hurricane. Interesting. With a thought, Sorata took back the space domain. Outside world. The moment the Sorata space domain was closed, a monstrous noise came from the street below the palace height. However, these voices did not affect everyone. Instead, it was the thunder that collided between Sorata and Doflamingo's Conqueror's Haki, spreading from the space domain, from the palace, to the entire highland. The huge purple-black thunder instantly quieted down the noisy streets below. What is this? Advertisement under the high ground, outside the man-made Devil Fruit Factory, Ahua, who was 4 meters high, punched down the Senor Peak, who was standing in front of everyone. When he saw Senor Peak, with a blue nose and a swollen face, after he passed out, a few tears appeared in his eyes. There was a hint of complexity in Ahua's eyes. He could feel that the man in front of him must have an interesting past. However, he didn't intend to inquire about his past, other people's lives, and it wasn't his turn to dictate. All he knew was that the guy in front of him was a pirate, a bad pirate. Therefore, he bent down to pick up the weapon thrown by someone who didn't know who threw it here. He raised the butcher knife without hesitation, and cut off Senor Peak's neck with one knife. Then he dropped the knife in his hand, turned around and looked into the factory, and shouted loudly, "Okay, you can come out." After saving the little people, he came to deal with the gate, and the 3 of Ahua were still inside to deal with the guards inside. "Oh, Mr. Wah, are you done?" Behind the gate, a group of small people, led by a small person with a pointed nose, full of blonde hair, combed into 2 braids, wearing a green flower on each side, Shojun like a doll, rushed out from behind the door. "Wow! Lord Wah, you are really amazing." When the villains saw Senor Peak lying on the ground with his body and head separated, they were not afraid, but looked up at Ah Wah excitedly. "That is, who am I? I am the great Iowa." Seeing the adoring eyes of the villains, Ah Wah raised his chin with a haughty expression. At this time, click, in the clear sky, the sound of thunder suddenly sounded. Looking at the purple-black thunder spreading in the sky, Ah Wah put away the smile on his face. Then he lowered his head, looked at the villain in the lead, and said, "Princess Manshwali, you just wait here for King Liku and the others to come up." Then, what about you, Mr. Wah? Manshwali had obviously just been rescued, so she was somewhat frightened. "Me?" Ah Wah held his head up. "Of course I'm going up, to deal with Doflamingo and the others." That's fine. Mr. Wah must be careful." "Ha ha ha. Just Doflamingo, no problem at all." Yo, bragging again. At this moment, at the gate, Aluo and others came out with more villains. Seeing Aluo and others, the villains quickly saluted. "Hello, Aluo, Atao, Robin, Indigo, and Brooke." "Okay." Arlo and the others nodded in response. Advertisement. Ah Wah stared at Aluo with both eyes. This guy interrupted his pretend as soon as he came out, which is really bad. Thinking of this, he called Kaido loudly. "Whoever is bragging, come and fight if you have the ability." Without Kuina by their side, of course they were emboldened. Come, whoever shoots who." Aluo shook his neck, touched Shamat's head shape on his body, and looked contemptuously at Ah Wah. "Okay, it seems that I have to let you know that I have a strong fist." Ahua obviously couldn't be afraid of Aluo. He clenched his fists and stepped forward as if he was fighting with Aluo. Okay. Seeing that the two were about to fight here, Robin quickly stood up to stop them, Sorata and the others are still waiting for us up there, let's go up quickly. Okay, okay. The two looked at each other, a flash of fire flashed in their eyes, but it finally went out. Business matters, there are plenty of opportunities to fight, not to mention, there should be opponents left for them by Sorata. Thinking of this, the two quickly turned around and walked towards the door. Move. Seeing the two who couldn't wait, Adao leaned against the door, raised her head and took a deep breath of the cigarette. Retarded. His eyes were full of contempt. Then he threw away the cigarette butt in his hand, straightened up, stretched out his foot to crush the cigarette butt, then turned and walked through the door. Awa and the two wanted to fight, and of course he wanted to too. Doflamingo doesn't have to think about it, and the four emperors don't have to think about it, but the cadres of the Don Quixote family and the upcoming four emperors regiment, they should be able to find their own opponents. With so many opponents, just thinking about it makes them excited. Since the 4-month special training in Little Garden, although they have obtained their own weapons and Adao has also obtained devil fruit, their physical fitness has been stuck at a certain level, and they cannot break through. This thing is like a membrane, which can be seen but cannot be touched, let alone break through. It makes them feel like they can see but not eat in the face of a peerless beauty. However, when they fought Virgo last time at Punk Hazard, they sensed the hope of a breakthrough. That is to fight the strong Haki. Through countless battles, use Haki to pierce that layer of membrane, and then their physical fitness can go further, and Haki can also go further. The three of Robin looked at the backs of the three of Ahua, and shook their heads helplessly. Then they told the little people about Sorata's plan and asked them to wait here for King Liku, then turned around, walked into the gate, and went go to the elevator on the upper floor of the palace. Strictly speaking, the three of them are not combatants, that is, they just went to watch a show. They knew that they couldn't help in the battle between Sorata and four emperors, but they didn't want to make trouble, so they didn't run around at this time. If there is something to do, just do it slowly afterward. Chapter 386 Kneeling Palace Heights. The cadres of the Don Quixote family all stood up and backed away as soon as Sorata took back the space domain. The mental oppression of the Conqueror's collision made even them feel terrified. Of course, this oppression is much less than the pressure that Sorata unilaterally brought to them. So after retreating to a safe distance, they all breathed a sigh of relief. Goodwill. Sorata stared at Doflamingo who stood upright, his eyes full of teasing, and then took a step forward, a more powerful Conqueror's Haki pressed directly on Doflamingo. Let the Conqueror's Haki, which was originally evenly matched, collide and turn upside down in an instant. There was no way, Doflamingo could only grit his teeth and persist, but as Sorata took another step forward, his body fell back as if he had encountered force majeure. Can you get away? The corner of Sorata's mouth raised, and with a thought, the space domain enveloped Doflamingo again. The huge pressure, coupled with the short-term vacancy of will after the collapse of Conqueror's Haki, made Doflamingo couldn't bear it anymore, his legs gave way, and he fell to his knees. D. Doflamingo, who was kneeling on the ground, put his hands on the ground, raised his head, a stream of blood flowed from the corner of his mouth, and his forehead was bulging, and glared at Sorata. From childhood to adulthood, even when he was driven out of the Holy Land Marijoy, he never knelt down during the most difficult time of his life. But now, this brat in front of him actually made him kneel down in front of so many hands. This made his sanity almost burned out by anger. Yo. Walking in front of Doflamingo, Sorata bent down, met Doflamingo's angry eyes that could be felt even if they were blocked by sunglasses, and jokingly said, very angry. With that said, he stood up, stared down at Doflamingo, opened his mouth and smiled and said, don't you always play with others like this? How? Now it's my turn, will I be angry? Haha, this is not acceptable. Speaking of this, Sorata shook his head, then bent down, met Doflamingo's eyes again, grinned at the corner of his mouth, and said wildly, I just want you to feel the mood of those who are teased by you, how is it? Have fun. Then he straightened up, regardless of Doflamingo's mood at the moment, stretched out his right foot, stepped on Doflamingo's head, and then stepped down hard, pressing down Doflamingo's head, which refused to die. Advertisement boom. Stepping on his head directly made him lie on the ground completely. Ah, you be asterisk 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 D. You be asterisk 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 D. You be asterisk 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 D. I must kill you, kill you. Doflamingo's remaining sanity was completely burned by this insult, and he lay on the ground with his head tilted, his face contorted. And the sunglasses that had been on his face all the time, also exposed a corner during his violent struggle. Ha 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 ha. Seeing the eyes behind Doflamingo's sunglasses, Sorata couldn't help covering her stomach and laughing out loud. Ha ha. So that's why you wear sunglasses all the time. I saw Doflamingo's eyes behind the sunglasses with a corner exposed. Even if he was angry and widened, the eyes were small and narrow. These eyes can't be said to be ugly, but they are really bad for Doflamingo's image, so it's no wonder that this guy never took off his sunglasses. People who don't know think that this guy's body is sunglasses. Dover. Dover. Little Lord. The cadres of the Don Quixote family standing in the distance saw their king being humiliated by Sorata in this way. Their eyes were bloodshot, and then they transformed, using their abilities, and then rushed straight towards Sorata. Yo. Sorata raised his head and glanced at the cadres of the Don Quixote family, and jokingly said, I didn't expect your subordinates to be quite loyal. Knowing that he was someone they couldn't fight against, he dared to rush over without hesitation. I have to say that although Doflamingo is a villain, he is really good for his subordinates who are really accepted by him. Only in this way will these men be able to fear life and death for him. But what does it matter to him? Thinking of this, murderous intent appeared in Sorata's eyes. I didn't want to pay attention to these cadres at first, but since they came up to seek death, let them all die. Okay. Just as he was about to kill someone, he felt the sound of an elevator behind him. Then a red light appeared in the eyes. Advertisement. You're lucky. Knowing that Ahua and others are going to come up, the murderous intent in Sorata's eyes disappeared, and then the nebula circulated, and the space field expanded, instantly enveloping the cadres of the Don Quixote family. Kneel down. Sorata shouted loudly, humming like a god, and a huge pressure instantly pressed on the cadres of the Don Quixote family. The bodies that made them rush forward froze in place for an instant, and then trembling, they stepped into Doflamingo's footsteps. For a moment, on the roof, except for the thumping of kneeling, there was no sound. All of them held their heads up and stared at Sorata with blood-red eyes, as if staring at a bloody enemy, and they were the victims who had suffered all kinds of insults. In the world of One Piece, there are many people who are greedy for life and afraid of death, but there are also many strong-willed people, especially New World. Obviously, these cadres of the Don Quixote family are all strong-willed people. Even if they knew that Sorata was the real top powerhouse in the world that they couldn't fight against, they couldn't even resist, they didn't hesitate to rush up to fight Sorata for their king. However, the reality is often cruel. Whether it is looking for death, whether it is meaningless, or whether it is the belief in his heart, Sorata ignores them all. He looked down at Doflamingo, at his contorted face, at his demonic eyes, bloodshot with rage, and suddenly lost interest for some reason. In this world, everyone seems to have their own ideals. Either good or bad. For their own ideals, they try their best to make progress. In fact, all these are very good quality, but who told Sorata not to be that kind, the kind of person who doesn't take human life as human life? If he was an evil person in his previous life, when you come to this world, you get invincible power suddenly, and you may do things that are more evil than most pirates in this world. Maybe it will become a real demon. All of this is thanks to the old Dean, who gave him childhood tenderness, and countless caring people in society who gave him warmth in the world, so that he did not breed evil in his heart because of his own birth. To be honest, he sometimes admires Robin. If he has experienced everything Robin did, not to mention destroying the world, but the world government is the main criminal, as well as Marine, even if many of the people in it are good people, if he has the power, he must destroy it. Sometimes, he also wondered why there are so many tragedies in this world, why so few people would stand up and resist. No, it's not nothing, it's most of their resistance, after going out to sea, they completely changed, became even worse, and became more powerful and evil than those who tortured them. Chapter 387. Don't get lost somewhere. This is not the previous life, this is a world where force is paramount. Here, with power, you have it all. Power can corrupt a person's heart. Because in the past, human beings were the same as you in your eyes, but after you gained power, they were no longer the same as you. If you think about it, they will die, if you get angry, they will be afraid, and everything you do will become a matter of course in their eyes. Over time, after gaining strength, the inflated heart can no longer make people maintain their original aspirations. Therefore, gradually, you change, became indifferent to life, and became more cruel than those who hurt you. This is human nature. What if, just if, instead of eating the flower fruit as a child, Robin ate a Logia devil fruit while she was out at sea, what would she have become? Sorata didn't want to think about it, he only knew that Robin was his partner now, her heart that was dark but still bright was her most valuable quality, that's right. Retracting her feet, Sorata turned and walked towards the rooftop, not looking at Doflamingo and the cadres of the Don Quixote family. These are small roles, even in Shichibukai, Doflamingo, who is not weak, is a small role in his eyes at this time. A small character who can be crushed at any time. Don't worry, he keeps Doflamingo and can train Haki for the three of Ahua. Anyway, this guy is also a strong man who has developed Conqueror's Haki to a very high level, and is also a strong man who has awakened the fruit ability. If it wasn't for his innate restriction, if it wasn't for the string fruit that restricted him, with this guy's genius level, he should have already become a character of Admiral's level. But there are gains and losses. Without the string fruit, this guy wouldn't be able to develop so smoothly, and he wouldn't be able to easily become the king of Doris Rosa. Moreover, maybe changing a fruit, this guy won't be able to awaken, maybe. No one can tell. Bang, at this moment, the elevator opened, and the three of Ahua took the lead, followed by Robin, Brooke, and Indigo. Looking at the scene on the rooftop, no one was surprised. It's just that when they looked at Doflamingo lying on the ground, there was a trace of surprise in the eyes of several people. Advertisement for Doflamingo, of course they know, even if they haven't seen it, but the will and the pink coat of the bag still let them recognize it. But at this time, Doflamingo's embarrassed appearance made them a little curious about what happened here. It seems that Sorata should have humiliated Doflamingo severely, otherwise, it would be impossible for everyone to feel the hatred of killing his father and enemy on Doflamingo. And even lying on the ground, he still tilted his head and stared at Sorata, as if he was about to eat people, which secretly surprised them. What a humiliation it is to make Doflamingo like this. It's miserable. The six smiled and shook their heads, then walked towards Sorata. Sorata, the little humans have all been rescued. Adao walked to the edge of the roof with a cigarette in her mouth, and leaned forward to look down. On the street below, countless people were hugging and crying loudly with countless men who came out from the second floor. In front of the crowd, King Liku was holding a loudspeaker, roaring loudly. What was he talking about? The distance was so far that everyone couldn't hear what he was saying. But it's not hard to guess what it is. After all, Sorata has already explained the seriousness of the matter to King Liku and the others. With the help of the people who have been turned into toys and the little people, I believe it will not take long for them to sort out the chaos and then evacuate from Doris Rosa. Sorata, these people. Ahua patted his stomach, turned around and leaned his back on the guardrail, raised his chin, and stared at the cadres of the Don Quixote family kneeling on the roof, licking their lips with malicious expressions. Sorata raised the wine gourd, took a big sip, turned around and glanced at the three of Awa with anticipation in his eyes, and said with a smile. Don't worry, it's all yours. Awa and the three of them have been trapped in this realm for a long time. In the first half of the paradise, there was no life and death battle. Fighting against Sorata and Kuina, due to the large gap, did not achieve the effect of exercise, so there has been no progress. But after entering the new world, they saw hope. For this, Sorata certainly knows. So these cadres are left behind. Doflamingo was also left. With the strength of the three, even if they are not Doflamingo's opponents, as long as they can't be killed by Doflamingo in seconds, the penultimate effect of the radish made by Ahua allows them to linger on the edge of death infinitely and get real exercise. Advertisement after this breakthrough, the strength of the three of them will usher in a big improvement, but their future lives should reach their peak. After all, there is really no comparison between people. The three of them don't have monster physiques, amazing willpower, and even less supernatural talents. If it weren't for Sorata, no one in this world would be able to bring the three of them to this point, let alone go one step further. But if you can go one step further, you have already surpassed most people in this world. Even in New World, where there are so many strong people, he can be said to be a strong man alone. After the breakthrough, the three of them joined forces, according to his estimation, even if they couldn't compare with Admiral, but with the addition of Radish, they could still do it with Admiral Joe Zahn. It's a pity that the Radish can work on the three of Ahua, including Robin and others, but it can't work on Sorata and the current Kuina. After a period of exercise, Kuina's body has completely degenerated. Before the transformation, the Radish can also add a small amount of physical strength to Kuina, but after the transformation, it has no effect. It can't be said that it has no effect, but it is only a little stronger than ordinary meat. For a powerhouse like them, having something equals nothing. After all, Radish is not about eating, but mainly about eating the special energy given by devil fruit. Without the blessing of special energy, the size of a radish is not as good as a large piece of meat. So the world government is worried that he will go to Marijoy to open Wushuang with carrots on his shoulders, and there is no possibility of realizing it. That's right, if radishes really have an effect on monsters like him whose body clearly surpasses most humans in the world, then it's really pervert. It won't remain unknown until Awa eats it, but even so, radish is still a shocking bug ability. As long as it is used by someone with unparalleled talent, that person can cross the basic stage in a short time. Imagine that if Luffy had the help of carrots, it would take less than 2 years, maybe a few months to master Conqueror's Haki proficiently. If Zoro uses radishes, like Kuina, he can cross the realm of swordsmen in a short time and become a truly famous swordsman. But now Zoro is different from the original book. With the foundation laid by Sorata, he only needs to fight against the strong. After countless battles, his strength will naturally improve rapidly. Thinking of Zoro, a flash of nostalgia appeared in Sorata's eyes. I don't know this guy, but he is in that place now. I haven't heard from him for a long time, so he won't get lost somewhere. Chapter 388 Hey, cut, uncharted waters. On the open sea, a small boat was moving forward rapidly. Behind the boat, a boy with a turban tied on his head was holding 3 knives, leaning against the side of the boat, squinting his eyes and rubbing his nose. Who is thinking about me? Zoro opened his eyes suspiciously, looked up at the sky, and then looked at the orange-haired girl standing in the middle of the boat and controlling the boat. Nami. Where have we been? This girl was rescued by him from pirates on an unknown island a month ago. Afterwards, he learned that the girl was a navigator, so he pretended to be embarrassed, but in fact, he was very happy to let the girl be his navigator. At first the girl was unwilling. Even knowing that he is Zoro, a famous pirate hunter in East Blue, he didn't agree. But in the ensuing conversation, after learning that he was from Simojiji village in Yixin Dojo, he agreed directly. This made him a little baffled. Nami pulled the sail, adjusted the direction, turned his head and glanced at Zoro with a hint of disgust in his eyes. Zoro strong is strong. This month, they met many pirates. No matter who it is, they're easily defeated by him. One thing she couldn't bear was that as long as she didn't look at this guy, he would get lost if he followed her. Thinking that in the past month, this guy followed her to exchange bounties and disappeared twice, she felt like she was on a thief ship. She is not here to be a navigator, but to be a nanny. If this guy wasn't someone's younger brother, she would have left him long ago. It has been almost a year since Sorata slew the dragon, and she went to sea. For nearly a year, she has traveled most of East Blue's waters. Of course, I also went to Simojiji village in Yixin Dojo. Although there is no specific source of Sorata in the newspaper, it does not prevent her from inquiring. She knew about Sorata's origin, and she heard it from Marine. Otherwise, East Blue is so big, it will take a lot of time for her to find Simojiji village. Shaking his head, Nami put down the rope in his hand, took 2 steps to the side, raised his hand on his forehead, looked forward, and replied with a smile. I saw the land, and the Goa kingdom should be in front of me. Correct. Having said that, Nami turned to look at Zoro, and asked in doubt. You always said that you have to wait for someone before going to the Grand Line, and you haven't told me who you were waiting for? If she hadn't been able to go to the Grand Line alone, she wouldn't have stayed in East Blue and the others with Zoro. Advertisement Zoro is powerful and is Sorata's younger brother, which makes her trust Zoro innately, which is the reason why she follows Zoro. That's right, there are still many places in East Blue that I haven't visited. I'll take advantage of this time to finish drawing the map of East Blue, and it won't be too late to go to the Grand Line. Wait for who? Zoro's mouth twitched. To be honest, he regretted that he made a mistake at that time and agreed to the Straw Hat Boy. Otherwise, he should be on the Grand Line by now. Now he found the most needed navigator, but because he promised the Straw Hat Boy, he will stay in East Blue for another year. Just thinking about it made him feel uncomfortable. Hey, Zoro shook his head, sighed, and said, you'll know when you get there. Since I promised him, I must keep my promise, so no matter what, I have to wait for him. Having said that, he raised his head, looked at Nami, and said expectantly, You will wait for us too. During this time, he saw how powerful Nami is. Simply the best navigator he had ever seen. On this sea, having such a powerful navigator will give them an unparalleled sense of security. Let's see then. Nami took a deep look at Zoro, even though he already had the answer in his heart, but his face remained expressionless. Seeing Nami like this, Zoro gritted his teeth and said, the pirates you killed during this period, the berry you exchange, and the rest are all yours. I only need the money for repairing the sword. After getting along for a month, he has completely figured out Nami's character. Hearing what he said, sure enough, a bright smile appeared on Nami's face in an instant. You said it yourself, I didn't force you. The pirates killed this month, and the berry they exchange, she shared with Zoro 50-50. She has long been envious of Zoro's berry. Thinking that the berry that kills the pirates in the future will be hers, her heart is filled with joy. Why don't you go to Goya Kingdom and see that Straw Hat Kid? She rubbed her chin, her eyes turned into money, thinking. Zoro looked at Nami, reached out and touched the money bag on his waist, and relaxed his body. Fortunately, he is a greedy person. Otherwise, Nami is really gone. Where can he find such a powerful navigator who doesn't make him hate him? However, the corners of his mouth twitched when he thought that he would be poor in the future and might not even have money to buy wine. Hey, Straw Hat Boy, I have sacrificed too much for this team, you have to live up to it. Thinking of Luffy, a cold gleam flashed in his eyes. I have to give Luffy a special training. How can I sail on the sea with such little strength, and how can I be his captain? Advertisement. He can feel the potential contained in Luffy's body, but due to lack of systematic training and being younger than him, all of them have not been fully stimulated. As long as his potential is stimulated, he believes that Luffy will also become a strong person. Otherwise, if anyone just ran out and wanted to be his captain, it would be impossible to think about it. He didn't know what to think of, but there was a smirk on his face. Nami, who was watching, shrank his neck. What kind of bad idea is this guy thinking of? It's not the idea of hitting my wallet. She couldn't help but grab the wallet at her waist, her palms clenched tightly. Looks like I'll have to buy a safe in the future. Letting go, Nami ignored Zoro and turned around, concentrating on controlling the ship. Looking at the horizon that appeared in the distance, there was a trace of expectation in her eyes. Who can make Zoro wait? Who? Of course. Kingdom of Goya, Windmill Village, in an open space in the back mountain. Nami looked at the boy in the straw hat who kept throwing food into his mouth, his brows were twitching. Zoro, she turned to look at Zoro, angrily said, this is the guy you're waiting for? This straw hat kid is a big eater. I am afraid that no matter how much food is prepared on the boat from now on, it will not be enough for this guy. In this short period of time, she was still eating a small piece of meat on the plate, but the straw hat kid was lucky, he actually let him finish eating a few beasts as big as her. Her mood at the moment cannot be expressed in words. Yeah. Zoro tilted his head and looked at Nami cautiously, shrunk his neck, nodded and said, that's him. You. Nami pointed at Zoro, wanting to say something, but couldn't say anything when the words came to his lips. Zoro, you were amazing, you found me the navigator so quickly, ha 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 ha. Swallowing the piece of meat in his mouth, Luffy's hand suddenly grew longer, grabbed the meat in Zoro's hand, and laughed loudly while eating. You be ***********. D. Seeing that his hands were empty, Zoro couldn't bear it anymore, stood up abruptly, and rushed towards Luffy. After a while, the sound of bang 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 was heard here. And, of course, Luffy's screams. Nami sat by the fire, staring at the sky speechlessly, feeling desperate for the future voyage. Hey, chapter 389 Dragon Sorata doesn't know. Because of fate, or because of him. Nami got on Zoro's boat and was taken to Goa Kingdom by Zoro, where he met the Straw Hat Boy, Luffy. Is it fate? God knows. Dressrosa. After a short period of chaos, the people of Dressrosa gradually calmed down under the persuasion of King Liku and the countless people who had been turned into toys in the underground toy factory. Then looking at the high ground of the kingdom, listening to the sound of fighting from above, he followed the little people in an orderly manner, and went to Greenbit through the suspension bridge. Everyone looked at Kingdom Heights with respect in their eyes. They know, save their hero, and fight Doflamingo up there. Although based on their cognition, they don't know why the four emperors came to Rosa and they have to evacuate here. But since this was requested by the hero who rescued them, and King Liku, they just follow the instructions of their benefactors. In short, there is no harm. On the high ground of the palace, on the huge roof, there are potholes everywhere at this time, and some potholes are directly transparent, revealing the rooms below. Several figures were fighting non-stop on the roof and in the room below, and the bang-bang sound came from where they fought. On the balcony, Sorata lazily leaned against the railing, staring boredly at the evacuated crowd below. He didn't expect King Liku to be quite powerful, and he sorted out the chaos of Rosa so quickly. In fact, what he didn't know was that King Liku actually borrowed his reputation. After all, they were the heroes who really saved Rosa. Silverhair, what do you want to do? Doflamingo is still lying on the ground. After such a long time, he has calmed down. The man in front of him is not something he can resist at all. No matter how angry he is, it won't help. What do you want to do? Sorata turned around, tilted her head to look at Doflamingo, raised the corner of her mouth, and said with a smile. Isn't it according to your script, waiting for Kaido? Doflamingo lay on the ground, opened his mouth and laughed loudly and said, Foo 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 foo. Wait for Kaido. I'm afraid you will be beaten to death by Kaido if you wait. He didn't understand. How did Sorata know that Kaido would come here? Advertisement Sorata seems to have told Violet before that Kaido would come, but because he was in a rage, he didn't care. Thinking about it now, I'm afraid the silver-haired kid knew that the four emperors would come from the very beginning. As for whether he knew that Charlotte Linlin and Marine would come, he didn't know. Whether Kaido can kill me or not, I don't know. Sorata shrugged indifferently, then raised his head and took a sip of wine, then lowered his head, stared into Doflamingo's eyes, and said wildly. I just want to be killed by him, or I will kill him, ha ha ha. You say, yes, did I kill him, or did he kill me? Madman. Doflamingo stared at Sorata and fell silent. Okay, at this moment, Sorata stopped laughing and turned to look at the sky outside Rosa. Beside him, Kuina's eyes arced, and she also looked up in the direction Sorata was looking. Doflamingo was bewildered and waited for a while before tilting his head with all his strength and looking at the sky with red eyes. When he saw in the sky above the open sea, among the tumbling clouds, a huge monster coming towards this side quickly, his eyes showed a gleam of excitement. It's coming, it's coming, it's coming, it's finally here. No one knows what kind of complicated emotions he has been through these few hours, being pressed to the ground by Sorata like an ant. He has always teased others like this. When did he become the one being teased? This made him, who has a lot of self-esteem, feel like a year in the past few hours. He had never hated a person so much, wishing he could eat the silver-haired kid alive. But he knew that, on his own, that could only come true in a dream. It's okay, now Kaido is here. He was finally freed from this weird pressure. He knew that this strange coercion could make him immobilized, but it would definitely not be able to suppress Kaido. Roar, before it approached, a huge dragon roar that shook the world spread throughout Rosa. What is that? At this moment, no matter who it is, when they hear the sound, they feel a tremor in their hearts, just like a rabbit hearing the cry of a beast. Even if they don't see the figure, the hockey that comes out of the sound makes countless people's hearts tremble. Feelings of fear emerge. As the clouds approached, a huge dragon's head emerged from the clouds and stopped outside Rosa. The huge dragon's eyes looked at the palace highland as soon as it appeared, and the eyes were tightly locked. The young man leaned lazily on the guardrail of the palace highland, on the figure. At this moment, everyone saw this huge dragon head. Advertisement Ahua and others stopped their fighting, rushed out of the room, and stood behind Sorata. The civilians who were retreating all stopped their evacuation steps, raised their heads and stared blankly at the giant dragon in the clouds, their eyes full of horror. Dragon? Is this myth radiating into reality? It turned out to be a dragon? Not to mention anything else, just the size of the giant dragon made their hearts tremble. Is this the four emperors King Riku said? If this big guy fights at Rosa? Thinking of this, everyone shuddered. In front of the crowd, King Liku looked at the huge green dragon that Kaido transformed into, swallowed his saliva, then turned his head to look at the high ground of the palace, with a hint of worry in his eyes. Can Sorata really beat this big guy? At this moment, he doesn't know. But this is not what he should think about at this time. He looked away, picked up the big horn, and shouted loudly. What are you doing in a daze? Go, go. His shout instantly awakened the evacuated civilians. They quickly looked back and rushed forward. Even people who used to be slow now wish they could grow 2 more legs. No one knows when the big guys above will start fighting. Staying here, they don't feel safe at all. Silverhair. With a huge shout, the Conqueror's hockey, which dominates the whole world, is sandwiched between them, and they head towards the high ground of the palace in an instant. This guy. Sorata glanced at the crowd who were still evacuating, and shook her head helplessly. If this guy's Conqueror's hockey rushes over, these civilians will never be able to evacuate. Withdrawing his gaze, Sorata raised his head to look at Kaido, his eyes fixed, and the figure disappeared in place, appearing in front of Kaido. A hockey that is also domineering in the world emanates from his body and meets Kaido's Conqueror's hockey in the sky. Click. The dark clouds in the sky suddenly changed color, and streaks of purple lightning intertwined in the dark clouds, and then split into 2 semicircular, domain-like Conqueror's auras. At this moment, as if the world was about to be destroyed, the sky split open. Chapter 390. If you want to die, I don't mind killing you early. Looking at the scene of annihilation in the sky, the civilians all opened their mouths wide, and once again froze in place. King Liku also froze in place, and then he reacted quickly, picked up the horn and shouted again. At this moment he is glad. As soon as the two people in the sky fought against each other, it created such a huge scene like a natural disaster. If they were allowed to fall on Doris Rosa, I am afraid that Doris Rosa would be razed to the ground soon. Right. On the rooftop, both Morgans and Firebird held up their cameras and snapped pictures. This was not human-powered, but a scene of destruction and destruction like a myth reappearing. The two trembled with excitement. They did not follow King Liku to evacuate Doris Rosa, but came to this rooftop. This is a major event that can be included in the history of the One Piece world. Even if it is death, they have to record it. And according to their feeling, following the silver-haired gang was safer than withdrawing Greenbit. Of course, whether it is safe or not is unimportant. What is important is that such a close distance, taking pictures of this kind of news, for their journalists, even if they die, they will die without regret. Foo. Is that really the case? At this moment, Doflamingo, like a demon out of the cage, stood up straight, spread his hands, looked at Sorata and Kaido in the sky, and laughed wildly. Jung. At this moment, the sound of the knife accompanied by thunder, like the ubiquitous wind, blew across the entire rooftop in an instant. The laughter stopped abruptly. Doflamingo turned his head slowly, looked at the blade around his neck, wrapped around thunder, and looked along the blade towards Kuina, with a hint of horror on his face. So fast. He was not defenseless, he was ready to fight the moment he stood up, but even so, Kuina's knife seemed to appear directly on his neck, so he didn't react at all. The sharpness of the blade made goosebumps on his neck. He had no doubt that this blade could kill him. Advertisement. Looking at Kuina's young face, his face completely darkened. He thought that the gap between himself and Sorata would be beyond his reach, but now it seems that the gap between him and Kuina is also huge. If you want to die, I don't mind killing you early. Kuina stared at Doflamingo. In the cold pupils, there was an electric arc flashing, a monstrous sharpness, like the coldness that penetrated into the soul, so that Doflamingo dared not say anything. Glancing at Doflamingo again, Kuina sheathed the knife, turned into a bolt of lightning, vibrated the air, disappeared in place with a hum, and appeared at the highest point of the palace. Doflamingo stood there with a sullen face, stunned for a while, then reached out to touch the small wound on his neck, raised his head, and turned his head to look at Kuina, who was standing on the highest place with his back turned to him. His eyes were full of tyranny mood. At this moment, the three of Awa looked at each other and rushed towards Doflamingo together. Previously fighting with the cadres of the Don Quixote family, they had actually touched the breakthrough level, only to be interrupted by the sudden appearance of Kaido. Of course they knew why Sorata and Kuina kept Doflamingo, so they were not polite at this time. Feeling the aura of the three rushing towards him, the veins on Doflamingo's forehead swelled, and his eyes were gradually covered with bloodshot eyes. Now, he also knows why he was left behind by Sorata and Kuina. I want to be a partner, a sandbag, and an experience bag. Turning his head, Doflamingo fixed his eyes on the three of Ahua, with a hostile look in his eyes. Then let's take the three of you first. He can't beat Kuina and Sorata, can't he still beat the three of Ahua? Thinking of this, he couldn't bear the tyranny and released it together, and his body also rushed towards the three of Ahua. At the highest point of the palace, Kuina turned her head and glanced at the three Ahua and Doflamingo who were fighting together, without any emotion in her eyes. As long as Doflamingo can't instantly kill the three of Ahua, even if this guy's conqueror's hockey is good, and the fruit development is even more awakened, when the three of Ahua break through, Doflamingo will undoubtedly lose. So after taking a look, she withdrew her gaze, raised her head and looked at the sky, holding the word Hidao in her right hand. Electric arcs flashed all over her body, and she was full of fighting spirit. Kaido couldn't help but take a look at Kuina's fighting spirit. The sharp edge that belongs to the swordsman reminded him of Kazuki Oden. Thinking of Kazuki Oden makes his chest ache. In the sea area not far from Doris Rosa, a huge marine warship with the letter G1 printed on its hull is rapidly heading towards Doris Rosa. Is there a fight? Looking at Doris Rosa, who can already see the shadow in the distance. Standing at the bow of the boat, Kizaru murmured lazily and solemnly. Advertisement beside him, Garp yawned boredly, then turned around and reclined back on the deck chair in the bow. Garp happened to be in the G1 branch during this time, and after receiving the order from the world government, he came straight to Doris Rosa. Kizaru came from the headquarters. After all, let him, an old man, face 4 emperors and silver hair alone, even he can't please him. Fortunately, this time they went to watch a show. The world government didn't issue anything, it was a stupid decision to take the 4 emperors and silver hair together. Unlike Garp and Kizaru's ease, followed the Flying Squirrel Vice Admiral, and the Ghost Spider Vice Admiral, and some Rear Admiral, it was not so easy. Although, everyone knows that this trip is to watch a play. But, that is the 4 emperors after all, there are others who don't know, but the Marine knows that the strength may surpass the silver-haired Sorata of the 4 emperors. For such a strong player, watching the battle is also risky. And they also know that Kaido's Beasts pirates, now out of Wano Kuni, are fast approaching Doris Rosa. There is also the Big O pirate group, which is also coming here quickly. Who knows if they will come to trouble those Marines who are watching the show by then. So they didn't take it lightly. Old man, is silver hair really that powerful? Behind Kizaru, a tall, but ball-like man with a huge axe on his shoulders took a step forward and turned his head to ask Kizaru. The man's name is Senmomomaru. He is the captain of the science force of Marine Headquarters, the bodyguard of Vegapunk, and the subordinate of Admiral of Headquarters, Kizaru, Paluzalino. Strictly speaking, he is not a Marine yet, because the science troop is subordinate to the world government and is directly managed by the world government. He came here this time mainly to watch the fun. Behind him, followed by an iron bump who was taller than everyone present. This iron bump is a masterpiece of Vegapunk, and it is not finished yet. It was brought by Zon Taowen for experimentation. I happened to meet Marine coming to Rice Rosa, so Zon Taomaru also took it with me. What if it will be used later? Chapter 391. Kizaru was silent for a moment before nodding in reply. Strong, very strong, although I don't want to admit it, but the current silver hair is at least stronger than me. It's so powerful. Zon Taomaru raised his head, looked at the cracked sky above Rice Rosa's sky, and his face was full of wonder. Thinking that he was about to meet the guy that the old man said was stronger than him, as well as the four emperors Kaido, his eyes became serious. Rice Rosa. Above the sky, Kaido frowned. When Marine looked at them, of course he also found Marine. And on the Marine warship, he also found Kizaru, which he hated, and the breath of Garp. Kizaru was okay. Garp is an old guy. If you meet him on the sea, even he has no choice but to run away, or else you can only be caught if the stalemate persists. Lifting the dragon's head, Kaido said loudly to Sorata, "Hey, brat, where is Guy?" He came here this time mainly for Guy. Fighting this brat in front of him was just incidental. Through the Conqueror's collision just now, he has already felt that the kid in front of him is a person on the same level as him. Wanting to win him in a short time can only be a fool's dream. Guy Sarah. Sorata tilted her head slightly, as if she didn't know this person. Who is that? Stop kidding, kid. The dragon's head moved forward, and the huge dragon eyes stared at the little one in front of him. Kaido said in a deep voice, Guy Saw is a key figure in Lousy Beast's pirates. I advise you to hand him over. Sorata stared at Kaido, shrugged her shoulders, opened her hands, hanging at her sides, and said helplessly, Unfortunately, I really don't know who this guy you're talking about is. You asked me to hand it over, but I didn't, so what can I hand it over? Besides. At this moment, without waiting for Kaido to speak, Sorata spoke again. He lowered his hands and stared at Kaido's eyes. In the blue pupils, nebula flowed, and murderous intent came out through his body. Besides, even if I know where Guy is, so what? Who do you think you are? If you ask me to pay, I will pay. Do I not want to lose face? It's just a mere 4 emperors. Do you think you are One Piece, or do you think you are Shanks and want me to give you face? Advertisement. Looking at the chattering Sorata, Kaido was very calm. After Sorata finished speaking, he opened his mouth and said, Little devil, I admire your courage. Are you finished? He could feel Sorata's murderous intent, and of course, he also had the murderous intent coming out of his body. The main purpose of coming here this time is to spread Guy, and the secondary purpose is to meet this kid in front of me. Although he didn't expect Marine to come so soon, but so what? He is Kaido. Even if he was caught by Marine after fighting with the brat in front of him, what else can Marine do to him? And his pirate group is not vegetarian, and will come to pick him up soon. Therefore, since the little devil in front of him wants to seek death, then he will fulfill him. Staring at Kaido, Sorata frowned, and touched Zon Kong's handle with his right hand. Hot interest. One-shot style draw the sword slash wave. As if they had a tacit understanding, the two started at the same time. Huge, like a volcanic eruption, a super powerful beam of flame shot out from Kaido's mouth towards Sorata. The huge flame reflected the clouds in the sky orange-yellow. Compared with the huge flame beam, Sorata is like a real ant in front of it. However, Jung, the crisp sound of metal rubbing came out with the cool light of the knife. A crescent-shaped, silver slash with a pinkish-black luster, like a galaxy, rising against the fire. When the slash and the flame impact collided, they were already about the same size as the flame impact. Puff. Attacks collide. Sorata's slash was a sharp slash after all. Even though Kaido's heat was not weak, he was still cut by the slash. The flame split in two, streaked across the sky, and fell from both sides of Sorata's body to Rice Rosa below. Tilting his head slightly, Kaido dodged the oncoming slash. And his heat. Boom, boom, like a meteorite, it slammed into the island below, leaving 2 bottomless pits on the ground. No words. Sorata held Zonkong in his right hand and flipped the blade, swung it to the right, and kicked his feet in the void behind him. Advertisement. Boom, there was an air explosion, and his body quickly rushed towards Kaido. He knows long-range slashing, and there is nothing he can do with the guy in front of him. Only by wrapping Emission Hockey's blade in a real way can he really break the guy's defense. Worororo. Kaido's huge dragon eyes stared at the rushing Sorata, and he opened his mouth to laugh. Little devil, that's not bad. You remind me of an old friend. That guy was a swordsman like you. Unfortunately, it's a pity that he died tragically in the end. Through the slash just now, he found that the kid in front of him was still a little worse than Kazuki Oden, so he didn't take it seriously. Hot interest. Even though he thought so, he still breathed out another hot breath at Sorata. Boom, a huge flame impact, like a laser cannon, rushed towards Sorata rapidly. Court death. Sorata looked at the oncoming heat, His face was flushed by the heatwave, but his eyes did not change, they were still cold. In the next instant, heat breath rushed straight through his body, submerging him in it. No, opening his mouth, Kaido felt that the danger of ultimate was approaching at this moment. He quickly adjusted and shrank his body back, while the huge dragon tail behind him was like a giant whip, and quickly pulled towards the void in front of him. Boom, the huge force pumped the air, leaving a series of piercing sonic booms in the air. Late. The two murmured at the same time. At this moment, time seemed to stop, and Sorata's figure appeared in front of Kaido in an instant like an afterimage. At this moment, he turned into a huge long knife wrapped in pink luster. Then, while Kaido's pupils contracted, he slashed hard at Kaido's chest. It was cut on his chest, on one of the two huge scars that criss-crossed each other. Puff. This can be said to be the place with the lowest defense on Kaido's body. The scar that was cut by Kazuki Oden still hurts Kaido until today. So even though Sorata's slashing at the moment didn't reach the level of Kazuki Oden's, he still slashed into this scar without much effort. The blood was like a fountain, spraying out from the cut wound again. And Sorata. Just like a bubble, when Kaido's tail twitched and the blood fell, it dissipated in the same place with the wind. If it weren't for the blood splatter and the afterimage of the giant dragon's tail, it would be as if he had never appeared. Chapter 392 Serious. The severe pain in his chest made Kaido a little dazed. How long has he been injured? Although he often seeks death, he keeps his mouth open and lets others kill him. But that was a display of extreme confidence in his defense. He is confident that no one in this world can break through his defenses, so he will go to death, commit suicide or something. But now, roar! Kaido's body moved in the clouds, and he opened his mouth to let out a terrifying roar. Under the severe pain, his ferocity was completely stimulated. He's going to kill the kid, can actually hurt Kaido. Below, on the high ground of the palace, while dealing with the joint attack of the three of Ahua, Doflamingo also kept an eye on the battle in the sky. Before the three of Ahua made a breakthrough, even if they joined forces, they were not his opponents, so it was very easy for him to deal with it. But the battle in the sky is related to whether he can escape, of course he will pay attention. However, what he didn't expect was that the silver-haired kid actually cut Kaido in such a short time. You must know that Kaido is not a cat or a dog, but the king landing New World, the true overlord of the sea, Kaido, one of the four emperor's beasts. This brat. Doflamingo's originally bright face turned gloomy at this moment. Kaido, can't do anything to him? Thinking of this, he looked towards the direction of the sea. Don't worry, there is still Big O and Marine. Heaven. Little ghost, a huge dragon's head protruded from the clouds. Kaido's faucet almost touched Sorata. The loud sound of that mouth, and the hot breath coming from the mouth made the air around Sorata twisted. Little ghost, I admit that I underestimated you earlier. Your ability to suddenly disappear and then appear in front of me is teleportation. No wonder the world government fears you so much. Sorata raised her head, stared at Kaido's huge eyes, and opened her mouth to mock. What? I'm afraid, you can't just be so capable. 4. Emperors. Advertisement. He deliberately prolonged his voice and said these two words. Sorata's taunt made the dragon's eyes turn cold instantly. However, Kaido's aura of the King of Beasts is nothing in front of Sorata, and he still stands in front of him with ease, without being affected in any way. Withdrawing his head, Kaido's voice came out of the clouds with an astonishing evil spirit. Little ghost, what can I do to hope you feel it well, and I will be serious next time. Worororo. Don't die too ugly, or I will cry for you. Click. At this moment, a large number of purple-red thunder suddenly appeared in the clouds, and there was a monstrous aura among them. Are you serious at last? Sorata raised his head, and the nebula flowed in his blue pupils. His gaze seemed to penetrate the clouds, and he saw that the human body had been restored inside. Transform into a monstrously tall, burly titan with a pair of gigantic horns on its head. Titan has black hair all over his head, casually draped behind his head, and a long black beard like a dragon's beard on his mouth. On the huge head, there are two blue dragon horns. The upper body is bare, except for the chest. The body is covered with blue scales. And there was an X-shaped scar on Titan's right abdomen. At this moment, the scar, the one leaning to the right, was bleeding profusely. This is Kaido in the strongest form. Don't look at this guy as rough and rough. He looks rough, but he is actually a very shrewd guy. He knew the form of the green dragon, and there was nothing he could do with Sorata at this moment. That huge body was just a rake, so when he got serious, he directly used all his strength and brought out the strongest state. He paid enough attention to Sorata who could hurt him. Click. The purple-red thunder, as if being pulled by some force, fell from a higher place and entwined directly on the huge mace that Kaido raised with both hands. Below the clouds, Sorata looked at the increasingly violent clouds, and he could feel the destructive power contained in them. Therefore, he has no reservations. He held a saber in his right hand, and with a ding, put the saber back into its sheath. Advertisement. Then the body leans forward, the left leg is bent, the right leg is turned backwards, the left hand is holding the scabbard of Zonkong and slightly raised upwards, the right hand is holding the handle of the Zonkong knife, as if drawing the knife. He raised his head, his eyes fixed on the clouds above. A same overbearing aura erupted from his body, distorting the space around him, and then purple-black thunder appeared out of thin air, like ferocious snakes, covering the entire sky in an instant. At this moment, the sky above the entire Darius Rosa has been completely shrouded in black clouds, making the entire Darius Rosa shrouded in the shadow of the black clouds. The thunder that fell from time to time that day kept striking Darius Rosa, making Darius Rosa seem to have angered the gods, and he was bringing down the calamity of destroying the world. Gudong! 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 By the suspension bridge leading to Greenbit, King Liku and Cyrus, as well as Violet and Rebecca, all swallowed their saliva while looking at this world-like scene. At this time, their faces were full of fear, and their hearts were beating non-stop. They never dreamed that human beings could reach this point. Before, they were still wondering if it was superfluous for Sorata to let them evacuate Darius Rosa. You must know that Darius Rosa is not small, and they did not believe that someone could destroy Darius Rosa just by fighting. But now, boom, turning their heads to look at a nearby house that was knocked down by random falling lightning, the four of them looked at each other, and they all saw the fear in their eyes. If there is no evacuation, the aftermath of the battle of those two guys in the sky alone can cause heavy casualties to the civilians of Darius Rosa. And they were so far away, they could also feel the overwhelming spiritual oppression that fell from the sky. You can feel the spiritual coercion standing on the edge of the island, let alone in the middle of the island. None of the four are noobs. Of course you know what this is. Conqueror's hockey. They are all under pressure here. If they were on the island, they might be able to bear it, but the countless civilians, just the aftermath of the leak, can make them all pass out. Therefore, at this moment, in the hearts of the four of them, Sorata has been regarded as a god-like person. If it wasn't for Sorata, they wouldn't be rescued. If it wasn't for Sorata, they wouldn't be evacuated. If it wasn't for Sorata, Darius Rosa at this moment would definitely fall into endless despair. Let's go. It's useless for us to stay here. The four of them glanced at the thunderous sky again, then quickly turned around, stepped onto the suspension bridge, and headed towards Greenbit on the other side of the island. There are countless people of Darius Rosa, as well as the little people. They are the link between the two races, so they can't stay here for a long time. They have to go there to appease everyone and sort out the chaos. After all, strictly speaking, Greenbit should be the territory of the little people. As the leaders of human beings, they were taken in by the little people, so they still have the necessary thanks. Chapter 393. Didn't you kill the last guy who claimed to be the overlord of the sky? These two guys. On the marine warship. Garp stood at the bow, looking up at the sky above Darius Rosa, with a hint of emotion in his eyes. He has not seen such a scene for many years. Last time in Saboti Archipelago, the fight with the silver-haired kid was not so much a fight, but more like a sparring. Whether it's him and Kizaru, or Sorata and Kuina, keep the fight confined to Island 1. Did not let go of the fight. Therefore, although the battle is still fierce in the eyes of ordinary people, it is not as devastating as the current battle between Kaido and Silverhair. Shaking his head with exclamation, Garp raised his head and looked at the tumbling clouds in the sky, and under the clouds, as if he was alone, facing Sorata, who was like a natural disaster, there was a trace of solemnity in his eyes. The former Rocks pirates, the trainee imps on the ship, have grown into the peerless New World 4 emperors of hockey. There is also the silver-haired kid, who has been at sea for less than a year. Although hockey lacks training and has not reached extreme strength, with his weird spatial ability, even he has to be defeated. Hey, I'm getting old. Garp sighed inwardly, boom. At this moment, the clouds in the sky suddenly parted from it, and a giant entwined with thunderbolts fell from it like a meteorite towards the small white figure below. Worororo. Kaido laughed loudly, holding a huge mace in both hands, and hit Sorata down. Go to hell, brat. David Thunder ate trigrams. Sorata raised his head. His figure at this time, under Kaido's body more than 8 meters high, was like an ant, and his whole body was not as big as Kaido's mace. But the aura on his body is the same as Kaido's aura falling from the sky with the thunder in his arms. In the blue pupils, there seemed to be a sword rising into the sky. Facing Kaido at this moment, Sorata turned into a sword. He didn't talk nonsense with Kaido, and he didn't hide. He originally wanted to fight Kaido to the death to temper hockey. Of course, this life and death battle, there is a saying, he lives, Kaido dies. Zonkong, which was also entwined with thunder, brought out the ultimate edge as soon as it was unsheathed, with infinite fluctuations, like an indestructible sword energy, easily cutting through the clouds above. After Zonkong was completely out of its sheath, outsiders could only see the knife wrapped in lightning, but not the specific face. Advertisement. One sword style, Juhei, God slash. Zonkong reversed and slashed upwards, as if he wanted to really shatter this natural disaster in the sky. Boom, the sky-shattering big explosion, accompanied by thunder all over the sky, completely flooded this area. Then the shockwave, like a sea wave, distorted the air, and rushed in all directions from the place of battle. The gray clouds brought by Kaido in the sky were completely swayed by the huge shockwave at this moment, revealing the golden sun in the sky. The ground, even at a distance, had a strong hurricane blowing. If it weren't for the people above who had evacuated here long ago, or the hurricane formed by the aftermath of this confrontation, it could blow people into the sky, causing heavy casualties to the civilians in Darius Rosa. The palace heights, the highest position. Kuina's clothes were rattled by the hurricane, but she seemed to have roots on the soles of her feet. No matter how strong the hurricane was, she would not be moved. Under the heroic eyebrows, there is a pair of eyes shining with a monstrous fighting spirit. She also wants to fight. Air. The two figures stood in a stalemate for a moment, then quickly separated, and then quickly collided again. Clang. 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 The huge impact sound carried an unparalleled shockwave, resounding through the entire sky. Gradually, the clouds in the sky dissipated completely, revealing a huge circle like a sinkhole. In the middle of the circle, there were two figures wrapped around a purple-red thunder and one wrapped around a purple-black thunder. As if turning into light, they kept colliding, then quickly separated, and then collided again. Worororo, little devil, it's really amazing. Clang, the two collided again. Kaido grinned and laughed wildly, happy, happy. Are you happy? Sorata held Kaido's mace, and grinned as well. He stared at Kaido and said arrogantly, it's really fun, but in this sky, Lousy is the overlord of the sky. As he spoke, he flicked Kaido's mace away with force with his arm, then held the knife in both hands, raised it over his shoulder, and slashed towards Kaido fiercely. Little devil, you are really crazy, Sky Overlord, didn't you kill the guy who claimed to be the Sky Overlord last time? Worororo. Advertisement. Even if Golden Lion is his predecessor, it doesn't affect him from mocking Golden Lion. Kaido held the mace in both hands, from bottom to top, wrapped around Thunder, and quickly smashed towards Sorata. Roar Thunder 8 trigrams, Blue Dragon, boom. The violent metal impact, accompanied by thunder, resounded through the heaven and earth again. However, as Sorata said, above the sky, he is the overlord of the sky. At this time, Kaido is in the form of a human and beast, not a blue dragon that can float in the air. At his level, it is true that he can step on the air and float for a short time, but it is impossible to be as free as Sorata, who treats the sky like the ground. Without the power brought by his feet on the ground, Kaido, who is in the air, is indeed impossible to be Sorata's opponent. The first time this guy fell from the sky, he was evenly matched, but in the subsequent collisions, this guy was actually on the weak side. And now, after a brief stalemate, Kaido, who had no follow-up power, was directly beaten down by Sorata like a real meteorite under Sorata's knife. Of course, this is what Kaido himself hopes to see. In human beast form, it is indeed impossible for him to exert his strongest power in the air. Boom, Kaido's huge body slammed into the street below the palace heights. The ground shook for a while, like an earthquake. And the ground at the impact was like the surface of water, with waves surging and rushing towards the surroundings. Wherever the waves go, no matter if it is a house or something, they are all involved and become part of the waves. Air. The arc on Sorata's body gradually disappeared, and he was suspended in the air, looking down at the center covered by dust. There is a bottomless black hole there. Due to the size of Kaido, the black hole is like being hit by a real meteorite, and the walls around the hole are all pitch black. And in that black hole, Sorata could feel Kaido's breath. Nothing less. That's right, at their level, unless they really can't bear it, it's impossible to get hurt, let alone get hurt before exhaustion. He was able to slash Kaido with a single blow before, which was the surprise of teleportation. Now he wants to slash Kaido again, unless he shamelessly keeps using teleportation, otherwise the battle between the two of them has only just begun. Chapter 394. Watching a theater in the dark pit. Kaido lay on his back inside. He couldn't see the inside, but he could see the white figure in the sky. This brat. Kaido grinned and laughed, standing up from the pile of rocks. I have to say, it's really strong. Although armament hockey is weaker than him, his weakness is limited and cannot be the key to victory. He could feel the monster-like power in the silver-haired kid's small body. That is not inferior to him. No, it should be more than him. He has only seen this kind of monster physique in one person in the whole world. That's the Charlotte Linlin monster. Never exercised, was born a monster, grew up to be the pinnacle of the world, a real monster. But so what? Who is he? He is Beast Kaido. The legs were bent, and the thunder came out of the void, and it was born out of thin air again. The purple-red thunder instantly filled the entire pothole. Looking from the outside, the pothole at this moment was like the entrance to hell, and a shocking aura was coming out from the dark hole. It's as if there is a monster that destroys the world, trying to step out of it. Air. In the eyes of ordinary people, the pitch-black pothole was dim in the eyes of Sorata, but it was not impossible to see everything. Kaido was looking at him, of course he was looking at Kaido too. Ding, holding Zon Kong in his right hand, he pulled a saber flower and put the saber back into its sheath. Then he leaned forward, holding the handle of Zon Kong's knife with his right hand, as if drawing the knife. To be honest, hitting Kaido to the ground is what he did specifically. Although Kaido is also very strong in the air, compared to him, it is a sandbag, which does not add much experience to him. Only Kaido on the ground is the strongest. With his eyes fixed, thunder appeared out of thin air around Sorata's body again, and then wrapped around Zon Kong, and behind him, a phantom of a huge green dragon head emerged out of thin air. Boom, kicking his legs in the air, his body rushed down like a sharp sword out of its sheath. Advertisement in the pothole, Kaido stepped hard on the ground with both legs. Boom, the ground collapsed, and the pothole collapsed, but Kaido's body rushed out of the hole the moment the pothole collapsed. Little devil, I have to say that you are very strong. Kaido, admit that you can be my opponent, but this is all I can do. Worororo. Laughing, Kaido's mace slammed into the air for Sorata. David Thunder 8 trigrams, 1 sword style, Ei, Xinglong. Getting closer, Sorata's figure completely disappeared, and a huge green dragon rushed towards Kaido, and the speed was getting faster and faster. In the end, it turned into a tangled blue light of thunder, like teleportation, directly across the distance between Sorata and Kaido. Boom, the weapons didn't collide at all, but there was a loud crash. Boom boom boom. Then a shocking explosion erupted here. The strong shock wave was transmitted to the ground, causing a layer of waves on the ground like ocean waves. At this moment, the entire Rosa was shaking, and even the surrounding sea was shaking. Kaido, use all your strength to make me happy. If you can't make me happy, then go to hell. Lifting Zonkong, Sorata held the knife in both hands, rushed up and down, and slashed towards Kaido again. Little devil, you are too rampant. Kaido raised his head and stared at Sorata with a frown, a hint of displeasure in his eyes. The guy said what he wanted to say. What did it make him say? I thought so, but his movements were not slow. He stepped on the ground with his right foot, held the mace in both hands, retracted it backwards, and then swung it up vigorously against Zonkong's blade. Boom, clang, clang, clang. The big move is fought, the conquerors is fought, the conquerors is entwined, and the next step is the regular battle. But that's the normal fight. The two who let go of their hands are not something ordinary people can imagine. The shock waves colliding randomly could easily destroy Rosa's house, and just stepping on it would shake the ground. And the shock wave of the two people's confrontation, with the hurricane, is like a tornado with endless energy, constantly radiating violent strong winds from the fighting place to the surroundings. Such a scene, along with the waves formed by the seawater around the island, caused the sea area to fluctuate violently. Advertisement green bit. Listen to the sound of violent collisions from the center of Rosa, as well as the fragments of houses that soar into the sky from time to time. The countless people who evacuated from Rosa all showed joy. They didn't know before, what does the battle between 4 emperors and silver hair mean? But now they know. That is the fight of the gods, which is not something that mortals can watch at close range. The hurricane blowing from Rosa, even in Greenbit, made them feel frightened. If they were still in Rosa at this time, the aftermath of the battle alone would have killed them tragically on the spot. Vice Admiral Garp, Pelusalino Admiral, shall we dock? On the marine warship, the flying squirrel looked at Rosa, his body rising and falling with the warship. However, this wind and wave cannot stop the marine warship, so at this moment, the marine warship is already very close to the port of Rosa. Here, they could hear the violent collision in the middle of the island more clearly, and they could also feel the island's constant tremor. The flying squirrel swallowed, stared at the backs of Garp and Kizaru, and asked in a serious tone. Although they came here this time to watch a play, it would be a bit unreasonable if they didn't go to the island. Let's watch a play. You have to look at it too. It's far away, how can I still watch a show? But thinking of the horror of those 2 guys on the island, he didn't want to go up. The civilians on the island, he felt, should have been removed before Kaido arrived. Based on Marine's understanding of Silverhair's personality, this guy did better than their Marine. Just like the Sabodi archipelago last time, knowing that there were civilians on the island, this guy didn't let go and fight. He still admires this. But Silverhair is a pirate, he is a Marine, and he admires him only in his heart, but he doesn't show it on his face. Haha. Of course I'm going up. Garp laughed, retracted his nostril-picking hand, flicked his fingers, and flicked the booger off his little finger, then raised his hand and waved forward, dock. Yes, Vice Admiral Garp. The flying squirrel saluted Garp, then turned to make arrangements for landing. Although there is Admiral on board, Garp is no ordinary Vice Admiral. What he said, on this ship, strictly speaking, is more effective than Kizaru. Marine heroes are not just talking. He is the hero of all Marines. Chapter 395, as expected of Teacher Kaido. Rosa. Although Marine went to the island, he did not go to the high ground of the palace, nor did he go to the center of the battle between Kaido and Sorata. Instead, they stood far away and did not bother them to fight. None of them are fools. If they pass by at this time, maybe Kaido and Yinfo will join hands and beat the Marine first. This is not what they want to see. Standing here is to release a signal that they will not participate in the war, which is a signal to watch the show. Anyway, no matter who wins or loses, the biggest winner is their Marine. Sunset, moonrise. When the sun jumps from the sea to the sky again, when the sun once again covers the earth. When looking at Rosa again, the battle has lasted for a day and a night. At this time, Rosa was completely in ruins. The entire battlefield is divided into 2 parts with the palace height as the boundary. On the right is the battlefield between the 3 of Iowa and Doflamingo. At the beginning, Doflamingo was able to focus on the other side, but when the 3 of Ahua broke through that layer in the battle and kept blocking their membrane, Doflamingo no longer dared to focus on other things. With the destructive power of Doflamingo's awakened fruit, and the 3 of Ahua, the battlefield on the right, although there are still some undamaged houses, is still like a scene after a magnitude 10 earthquake. Compared with the battlefield on the right, the battlefield between Sorata and Kaido on the left is much more tragic. The house was completely invisible here, and the whole ground seemed to have been cut by a knife, and it sank several meters. And in the center, it was like being hit by a real meteorite. The soil formed circles from the inside to the outside, and in the middle, it became a huge hole more than 10 meters deep and hundreds of meters wide, like an arena. And in that pothole, it was still ringing at this moment, the sound of clashing weapons. Immediately following the sound came shockwaves, circles of shockwaves radiating outwards, with tumbling dirt sandwiched from time to time. Clang, Kaido looked at the young face close at hand. His body was covered with white mist, his brows were wrinkled, and his eyes were full of solemnity. This brat. At the beginning, he could still feel Sorata's use of haki and haki's conciseness. Compared with him, there was a bit of a gap, but after a day and night of high-intensity fighting, this kid actually used him as a sharpening stone. Now haki, it's almost the same as him. What the hell kind of monster is this? Even for a monster like him, he couldn't help but be amazed by the physical fitness of the kid in front of him. Advertisement: this little ghost is like refined iron. After his day and night of tempering, haki has completely transformed into real steel. If at the beginning, he could deal with it easily, of course, he couldn't say it was easy. After all, he had to be on guard against the kid's teleportation at all times. And now, this kid's blade. Looking at Zonkong, the armament haki entangled with jet black ink, condensed ultimate, and glowing with pink luster, the corners of Kaido's mouth twitched. Now Zonkong, if he is not careful, he will be cut through the defense and thus injured. So he didn't dare to be careless at all. And this kid, and that elusive teleportation. Kaido looked serious, but Sorata looked happy, as expected of teacher Kaido. Sorata is very satisfied, from meeting the golden lion in the sea, until now, his haki has finally reached the top. Although it can't be compared with Mr. Garp's decades of haki condensedness. After all, the old man's armament haki has completely surpassed the peak and is the only one in this world. Of course, that is Garp after all, the father of Monkey D. Long, the future One Piece, the grandfather of Monkey D. Luffy, the monster among monsters, the real-world peak powerhouse whose strength has not regressed even though he is old. Haki, which has been condensed by others for decades and through countless battles, is certainly not something he can catch up with in a decade or so. Of course, he will not underestimate himself. After all, in terms of overall strength, in this world, except for I Am, who doesn't know the depth of his strength, no one is his opponent. And the 4 emperors like Kaido, now in his hands, can only be used as his sandbags to help him improve his strength faster. Clang, Kaido's mace bounced off with a knife. Sorata took a step back, and then kicked his right foot on the ground. Boom, the hard ground collapsed in an instant, and his body rushed forward quickly, the knife in his hand swung at Kaido bitterly. Clang, the knife and the mace split as soon as they touched, and then quickly collided together. Sorata looked at Kaido's solemn face, with the corners of his mouth raised. He opened his mouth and laughed loudly. How about it? Do you still have the confidence to take me down now? While parrying Sorata's slash, Kaido replied loudly, Little devil, don't be too arrogant. I admit that you are very strong, and I also recognize your title of 5th Emperor of the Sea, but you also have to respect me as a senior. As he spoke, he held the mace in both hands and swung it fiercely at Sorata. Thunder 8 trigrams. Click. With the thunder and lightning intertwined with the mace, it quickly smashed towards Sorata. Advertisement, yo. Sorata swung his knife to meet him, and a trace of lightning wrapped around the knife. Clang, it is easy to take over teacher Kaido's teaching stick. He raised his head, stared into Kaido's eyes, and sneered, You're angry from embarrassment, aren't you? Kaido didn't answer, just retracted the mace, and then slammed Sorata hard again. Anger is useless, except for affecting one's sanity, it has no effect. During this day and night battle, he was angry, especially at the beginning. After being cut by Sorata, he was really angry. But at that time, he couldn't do anything about the kid in front of him, let alone now. Clang, flicking Kaido's mace again, Sorata's body floated into the air and floated into the sky. Floats over Kaido's head. Lowering his head, Sorata put away the smile on his face, and there was a cold murderous intent in his blue pupils. At this time, like most of the strong men in this world, haki has nowhere to go. At his stage, haki is completely over the top except for timing. So at this time, teacher Kaido has reached the time when he can go offline. It is better to drink leisurely than to fight meaninglessly. Therefore, Sorata held out her hand, palm down. Let's end it as soon as possible, In Sorata's palm, the space was extremely distorted, and then a palm-sized transparent air bubble appeared under his palm. Kaido. The little devil is planning to kill, is there any hole card? Kaido raised his head, fixed his eyes on Sorata, and a monstrous anger erupted from his body. Sorata looked down at Kaido, and said indifferently, In the next battle, you will have to struggle hard, because if you don't pay attention, you will have to meet Kazuki Oden. Then he patted Kaido slowly with his palm. I saw the air bubble under his palm. As soon as it left his palm, it rose against the wind, and instantly turned into a monstrous giant palm tens of meters in size, and then slapped Kaido hard. At this moment, Sorata is like a real god, and Kaido is the loach in his palm. Chapter 396 Broken Space. This brat. On the side of the island, on the raised mound, Garp stared at Sorata, his lazy expression became serious. Based on his understanding of Sorata, the current Sorata is ready to kill. Also get serious and show all your strength. Does this mean you don't want to fight Kaido? Just like fighting him a month ago, I just used him as a sharpening stone at first, until he couldn't improve himself, and then used that weird space ability. But now it's different from the battle with him a month ago, when he didn't feel the killing intent from Sorata. The battle between the two was more like a sparring match. It's obviously different now, the kid wants to keep Kaido here forever. Thinking of his embarrassing situation in the Sorata space domain a month ago, even he could only fall into infinite passivity in the face of Sorata's weird domain, and he didn't think Kaido would be better than him. And, thinking of the pitch-black, weird sword blade that could swallow even light, his eyes were full of fear. Will you use that weird ability? The old man Garp was looking forward to it. After all, it wasn't him facing it. He can kill Carterus in an instant, but based on his understanding of Kaido, he can't hide and can only die. Even Kaido is known as the strongest creature in the sea, land and air. 4 emperors. It's not that Marine doesn't want to wipe out the 4 emperors, but it can't. The world government needs balance. Marine wants peace. With Marine's military power, in the face of this magnificent era of great pirates, it is already dwarfed by the suppression of these countless pirates, let alone the 4 emperors. Each 4 emperors group is an aggregation of countless pirates. There are 4 emperors who are not inferior to Marine Admiral, and even surpass Admiral. There are countless minions. This is not a pirate group, but a warlord, a prince who occupies the sea as king. Therefore, in order to eliminate the 4 emperors, Marine must draw most of Marine's strength and concentrate to eliminate 4 emperors. However, in this way, the 4 emperors are not fools, wouldn't they form an alliance? So, gradually, even Marine, strictly speaking, is the largest military organization in the world, had to retreat back to the sea area at the entrance of New World, handing over most of the sea area of New World to the 4 emperors. And in this situation, there is now a spoiler, a powerhouse who surpasses the peak of the world, and even he has to avoid his edge and truly surpass the peak. This strong man can kill the 4 emperors, can kill Admiral, and can break the weak balance established by Marine, 4 emperors, and Shichibukai in the past decade or so. Advertisement well. Not that it can be broken, but that he has already broken it. Since Sorata went to sea, Shichibukai has killed 2, and will soon be the 3rd. With his insight and strength, coupled with his understanding of Ahua Carrot, it can be seen at a glance that Doflamingo, who fought with the 3 of Ahua inseparably, has actually decided his defeat early on. After all, there is a Kuina who holds the strongest Logia Thunder Fruit at the top of the kingdom. What is this? Beside Kizaru, the tall Senmomomaru was holding the handle of the giant axe with both hands, looking at the huge empty palm in the sky with horror on his face. He had seen the same move on another strong man, however, different from Big Bear's moves. The huge palm in the sky at this time gave him the feeling that it was not compressed air, but compressed space, with unparalleled oppression. From such a long distance, he could feel the sudden pressure. No one could answer him, because people here, even Garp and Kizaru, saw Sorata use such a move for the first time. Under the huge palm. Unlike Marine who was far away, Kaido felt unparalleled pressure when Sorata's palm was slapped. It's like the sky is falling. Boom, before the palm fell, the ground under him could not bear the pressure and cracked. Little devil, it's really amazing. Kaido raised his head, looked at Sorata, put down the mace in his hand, and then a ruthless look flashed in his eyes. Roar, he raised his head, let out a loud roar, and then a large number of white clouds appeared around his body, and then his whole body turned into a huge green dragon. Qinglong raised his head and let out a growl, rushing forward to meet the palm. Boom, the dragon's head collided with the palm, and there was a shocking sound. The huge dragon body sank downward, but fortunately, the palm stopped under the power of the dragon. But Kaido didn't feel good either. The incomparable pressure was not only on the palm, but also came from the surrounding space, as if it was going to crush him into a ball. On the palm, Sorata chuckled. He was not surprised that Kaido blocked his void handprint. Advertisement after all, at Kaido's level, it is still very easy to use all your strength to break his domain space. But if you want to block it like this, you are too underestimating my void handprint obtained by compressing the space. Sorata lowered her head, her eyes flickering coldly. Then the body sank down, and under his feet, a layer of ripples appeared in the void, and then the entire space, starting from his feet, was pressed downwards. Boom. 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 Under the palm, Kaido pressed against the palm tightly, but the pressure was getting stronger and stronger, so that his body had to be pressed down a little bit. Circles of space ripples, with extremely strong shockwaves, swept away towards the surroundings. Even if they are far away, the Marines can know the pressure Kaido is under at this time from the oncoming shockwave. You brat, just because of this, you want to suppress me. Kaido raised the dragon's head, opened his mouth, and flames rose from his mouth. A fireball quickly condensed in his mouth, and when it condensed to a certain extent, he opened his mouth wide, and sprayed the fireball in his mouth towards the upper palm. Boom, the flames sprayed under the palm and exploded directly. Ka. Numerous cracks spread outward from the place where the flames hit, and instantly spread to the entire palm. Kaido saw that the flame impact worked, and he could obviously feel that the pressure in the surrounding space was much less, which made his eyes light up. Then his body retracted, and then the huge dragon tail, from bottom to top, slammed into the place where the cracks had already formed. Palm. Click. This time, it wasn't just the palm, but the space around him, like a mirror, with countless tiny cracks. It turned out to be the space domain. Kaido stared at the cracks around him, a flash of understanding flashed in his eyes. This brat, at some point, used this weird space to cover this area, which caused the pressure in all directions. The formation of the crack made Kaido feel light all over. He made persistent efforts, retracted the tail, and then pulled it upwards even harder. Bang, like a mirror, the surroundings, including the upper palm, were completely shattered under Kaido's twitch. Under the sunlight, the broken space shone with colorful rays of light, like countless ice crystals, which quickly dissipated amidst the shining rays of light, Chapter 397 Suppression. Good. Sorata stretched out her hand to block Kaido's twitching tail, looked down at Kaido, and said with a smile, "You don't think it's over?" As he said that, he let go of his hand, and the figure disappeared in place. The next moment, he appeared in front of Kaido. This guy turned into the shape of a dragon, isn't it a target for him? The crisp knife sound instantly resounded through the heavens and the earth. Endless sharpness enveloped the area in an instant, and Kaido's heart, which had just breathed a sigh of relief, tightened in an instant. To suffer. Before he had time to think about it, he wanted to change back into a human form. However, he hadn't waited for him to start changing. The cold knife light cut across his chest in an instant. Puff. His body, like tofu, only resisted for a moment, before being sliced by the moonlight like knife light. See. A large amount of blood, like a fountain, spurted out from the open wound on his chest. Roar. Ultimate's pain made Kaido's body stiff for a moment, and then his body shrank back, screaming and rolling continuously. This knife is not like yesterday's knife. Today's Sorata, armament hockey is different from yesterday. Although the amount did not increase, and the degree of condensedness did not increase much, but such a small increase produced a qualitative change. If we say yesterday, if Sorata's slashing attack did not hit the wound left by Kazuki Oden, even with all his strength, it might not be able to break through Kaido's defense. However, today, he can do the same as Kazuki Oden with just slashing, truly breaking through Kaido's dragon-scale defense. If this guy doesn't turn into a dragon, he can still use armament hockey to defend, but if he turns into a dragon, how can he defend against his slash? If it's not for him to be a target, what else can it be? Apparently Kaido thought of that too. Hockey doesn't cover as wide as possible. With his body transformed into a dragon, it is indeed too difficult to defend against Sorata's slash. Kaido rolled a few times on the ground, and soon regained his human form. Advertisement in the distance, Kaido held a mace in his left hand, lowered his head, the evil spirit on his body seemed to condense into substance, and around his body, a wave of heat distorting the air rose up. He let go of the hand covering his left waist, looked at the blood red on his hand, and his eyes were gradually covered with blood. This is the second time he has been injured, this brat. Opening his mouth and spitting out a mouthful of heat, Kaido raised his head, staring at Sorata with blood-red eyes. Without any words, he held the mace in both hands, stepped on his right foot behind him, and rushed towards Sorata quickly. Blood can only be washed with blood. However, Sorata didn't intend to play with him anymore, so when Kaido rushed into Sorata's body at a distance of 20 meters, a familiar pressure that he had just experienced was overwhelming and instantly pressed on him. The sudden pressure slowed down his forward body. And at this moment, in front of him, Sorata who was suspended in the air disappeared again. Okay. The disappearance of Sorata brought Kaido's heart to its peak in an instant. His eyes flashed red, as if he had sensed something. He turned around quickly and drew the mace behind him. Boom, behind him, silently, Sorata's figure emerged, and the pitch-black blade in that hand also slashed towards Kaido, right on the mace Kaido drew. Click. From where the blades met, a large number of cracks emerged. This is Sorata's space domain, so the two of them are fighting and it is easy to break the space here. In the dense cracks, Sorata's figure also shattered with the space. He grinned at Kaido, and then the figure disappeared. This brat. Kaido stood at the same place, staring at the crack in the space, staring at the space that was restored to its original state in an instant like a flashback. His pupils shrank, and the pressure that had just broken the slack in the space was pressed on him again in an instant. At this moment he, extremely alert. How long has it been since I felt this way? I remember the last time I faced pressure was when I was in the Rocks Pirates. At that time, he was still a trainee pirate, although he was also very strong, but before he got the fish fruit, his strength was just that. So at that time, he was often on the verge of life and death. And when he left the Rocks Pirates, he never experienced life and death again. Even Kazuki Oden, who left him with permanent scars and psychological shadows, did not actually bring him a life and death crisis. But now, he felt this crisis again, back. Advertisement holding the mace, Kaido felt the sharpness again, and without hesitation turned around and drew it behind him. Hit. Looking at Sorata, who was hit by him, Kaido frowned. Wrong. At this moment, the Sorata in front of him who was hit by him smiled slightly at him, and then he felt the monstrous sharpness coming from behind him again. That's too late. In this weird space, he was under pressure from all directions all the time, which made him feel like he was fighting with a mountain on his back. In such a state, although his thinking and combat experience are not affected, and he can already feel the crisis, his body can't move with his thoughts like the outside. This kind of reaction is especially deadly in the battle of top powerhouses. Before he had time to think about it, he quickly mobilized the armament hockey in his body to defend behind him. Then he tightly held the mace with both hands and wrapped it around the conqueror's hockey. His eyes were full of fierceness, and he pulled it behind him without hesitation. Even if he realizes that it's too late now, with Sorata's armament hockey at this time, and the attack power of the swordsman, even if he defends with all his strength, he can break through his defense, but even if he is cut, he will give this brat a stick. Puff. As he thought, even though he had already put on an armed defense, the kid's armament hockey, which was not inferior to him at all, coupled with the conqueror's entanglement, still broke through his defense. Ignoring the piercing pain in his back, fierceness flashed in his eyes, and he swung back, his peak at the moment. Ka ka ka. Before the mace could attack, the surrounding space seemed to be unable to bear the force, and it shattered like a mirror. Go to hell, brat. Turning around, Kaido looked at Sorata with a grim look on his face. Die? At this time, what are you using to kill me? Sorata looked at Kaido, completely ignoring the mace that was drawn quickly, with a knife in his right hand, swung to the right, and swung the bloodline off the knife. This is your courting death. Kaido looked at Sorata's completely undefended and unresisting posture, with an ultimate gleam in his eyes. Clang, the mace hit Sorata hard on the left side of the body. Erupted, like a chiming sound in the air. Then the ground shook, starting from the place where the battle took place, the entire Doris Rosa was split open. Smoke and dust quickly covered the entire battle center, making outsiders invisible to the scene inside. This kind of movement caused the three of Ahua and Doflamingo on the other side of the island to pause for a moment, but after a moment of pause, they collided again. Chapter 398 Absolute Defense. How come? How is this possible? Kaido and Marine in the distance all stared at Sorata in shock. Is it similar to the barrier of the barrier fruit? The flying squirrel stared in shock at the distance, where Kaido's mace made physical contact with Sorata. Wrong. He shook his head again. Isn't this guy a space-type fruit ability? Unlike the shock of flying squirrel and others, Garp and Kizaru were much calmer. In Marine, only a few high-level people know that the silver-haired kid is not a demon fruit power at all. That guy is a special race that has never appeared in this world. A special race born to control space, different from others. Garp and Kizaru even vaguely knew that the spatial ability of Silverhair endowed him with extremely strong defense. After all, they are the only ones here who have played against Sorata for a long time. This guy fought them and was never wounded, not even his clothes were torn. I didn't think much about it before, but now seeing that Kaido's attack wrapped around Conqueror's Haki has no effect on the silver-haired kid, they realize that this guy's strongest ability is nothing else. Maybe it's not the instant kill Carter's the strange black energy, but this incomparable defense. Click. The island splits open. With Sorata and Sorata's feet as the boundary, it split in two. From here, you can know the great power of Kaido. But even so, looking at the unscathed Sorata, all the people who saw this scene twitched their mouths. Especially Kaido. How old is this guy? Only 18. Conqueror's Haki is not inferior to him at all, and his body is even more monster among monsters. With such a small body, his strength is similar to his. Isn't this a monster? Originally a great swordsman, or a great swordsman with teleportation, it is pervert enough. But now this guy has a more perverted defense than the barrier fruit. What the hell is it? The barrier fruit is indeed an absolute defense, but it will never be like the silver-haired kid. He felt that he was not hitting a barrier, but a world. Advertisement. That feeling, as if the whole world is defending, is by no means what the barrier fruit can do. Yo! Silently, a white figure appeared behind Kaido. The figure was not tall, but exuded the edge of ultimate. At this point, are you still in a daze? Sorata was floating in the air, and with a twist of the blade, he slashed straight at Kaido's back. Little devil, don't be too arrogant, you were not born when Laozi crossed the sea. Like a prophet, Kaido quickly turned around and blocked Sorata's slash with the mace from bottom to top. Clang, well, indeed. For Kaido's words, Sorata nodded in approval. He then tilted his head, stared at Kaido's bloodshot eyes under the mace, and mocked, and then? Going out to sea for so long, you're just nesting in a closed-off place like Wano Kuni and dominating the world. From this point of view, you are not doing well. What do I do? It's not up to you, a brat, to tell me what to do, and what do you know? Kaido stared at Sorata with wide eyes, like a beast. Forget it, I won't waste any more time with you. Sorata put away the smile on his face turned cold, he lowered his head, stared at Kaido, and said indifferently, since you are here to trouble me, then you can go to hell. After the voice fell, Sorata's figure floated backwards. Just as Kaido was about to chase, a familiar pressure came from all directions again, and Sorata, who floated to the side, let go of Zonkong's hand at this moment. And the blade floating in the air turned the tip of the blade and shot towards Kaido quickly with a pop, leaving a black line in the air. Haha. You can play with my knife here. Sorata looked at Kaido, who was standing with Zonkong, laughed, then took out autumn water from his trouser pocket and threw it at Kaido. 2-on-1, although the power of a single knife cannot compare with the power of the silver-haired kid holding the knife himself, but the blade wrapped around emission Haki, coupled with its unparalleled speed, can still make Kaido feel dangerous. If you are not careful, you will be injured. Kaido stared at Sorata angrily, and while dealing with two knives, he roared angrily. Little brat, if you have the ability to kill yourself, what is your ability now? He knew that this kid was supposed to consume him to death like this. Sorata ignored Kaido. He didn't take the last man's yelling and barking at all. Advertisement sitting cross-legged in the air, Sorata took off the wine gourd from his waist, uncorked the gourd, and raised his head to take a big sip. Huh, cool. Putting down the wine gourd, Sorata looked at Doris Rosa, who had been completely turned into ruins, and a trace of pity flashed in his eyes. It's a pity that I didn't go to get a drink first. I don't know what unique good wines Doris Rosa has. These are completely in ruins and I can't drink them if I want to. Not right. Tilting his head, looking towards the high ground of the palace, Sorata's eyes lit up. Although the palace heights was also destroyed, compared to the streets below, it can be said that it has been well preserved. With Doflamingo's status in Doris Rosa, if there is any good wine, it must be in his palace. Okay. It's finally here. At this moment, everyone, except Kaido, who was deeply trapped in the Sorata domain and couldn't escape at all, turned their heads to look out to sea. Everyone could feel that there was a particularly terrifying aura coming towards this side quickly. Before it was even close, there was a unique, quadruple A, laugh. Why is this old woman here? Kaido flew into the air with a stick, turned his head to glance at the sea, and there was a glimmer of hope in his eyes. This weird space made his reaction drop a lot, and although he could break this weird space, it was like an endless thing. When he broke one layer, another layer covered it, allowing him to escape at all. Stay home. Seeing the relaxed look of the silver-haired kid, it is obvious that this weird space is nothing to the kid. But it was a waste of his physical strength. He had to resist the ubiquitous pressure and deal with the two indestructible flying swords. His physical strength was exhausted faster than fighting the silver-haired kid outside. If no one came to break this balance, sooner or later he would be exhausted by the kid and die here. Although he is known as the strongest creature in the sea, land and air, he has been caught many times by Marine, but he escaped easily without dying. But only he knows that it's not that Marine can't kill him, but that he is useful to the world government and Vegapunk, so Marine didn't kill him. As for his defense, most people would definitely not be able to kill him, but that didn't include the silver-haired kid. Sorata can slice through his hockey defenses, not to mention after he's exhausted. So the old lady came to Doris Rosa at this time. Although Kaido was puzzled, he still felt a sense of joy in his heart. After all, no one wants to die, including him, of course. Chapter 399 Big Mom Pirates Doris Rosa, Open Sea. A huge red and pink pirate ship is heading towards Doris Rosa quickly. On the huge sail, there is a waving skull flag with pink curly hair, a top hat, and lipstick. Although this ship does not often appear on the sea, this flag, and the sail with the word, Big Oo, printed on the upper layer of this flag, are reminding people who see this ship how much they are, how far out of the way. Because this ship represents Charlotte Linlin, one of the 4 emperors of New World, and represents the Bago pirate group. Mother. Prow, slender, with a proboscis and chest-length tongue, long dark blue hair with light blue Madara points, wearing a top hat with several lollipops, and a long light yellow coat, holding a candy cane in his hand. Parasparrow, with a pointed face and heavy makeup, looked at the huge figure beside him and said with a smile. Doris Rosa is ahead. Mother, is it worth making a special trip for that brat? This guy is Charlotte Linlin's eldest son and her first child. Member of the Big O Pirates, Candy Minister of the Toto Land Kingdom, resident in the town of Parolin on the Candy Island. Paramecia Devil Fruit. Licking Fruit. Ability, Candyman, with a bounty of 700 million berry. How to say? There is still strength, but compared to ordinary pirates, it is not enough to meet top pirates. Behind him, there were several tall figures also wearing weird costumes. Charlotte Linlin came, and the Big O Pirates came, but not all of them came. The people on this ship are all sons and daughters of Charlotte Linlin. I don't know how Charlotte Linlin can give birth so well. In her life, she is only 65 years old now. There are actually 43 husbands, 39 daughters, and 46 sons. If every husband is basically twins, 1 term per year. She has been pregnant since she was 22 years old. Even so, she is one of the 4 emperors of the New World. No wonder it is considered a monster by default by everyone at the same time, known as the Natural Destroyer. Charlotte Linlin, with a height of 880, is the tallest known human being. At this time, she has long pink curly hair, thick lipstick and light purple eyeshadow, a pirate hat, and a large pink dress. She turned her head and glanced at Parasparrow and said with a smile, "This silver-haired kid, according to Doflamingo, is a special race, so I hurried over here. And his strength is not something that ordinary people can win." The usual Charlotte Linlin is actually not difficult to get along with, especially in front of some of her favorite children. For example, the eldest son Parasparrow in front of him. Another example is her proud and favorite son, Katakuri. Advertisement for these sons, although she is independent, she still has a kind side when she is not sick. Of course, with her more children, they are all tools for family marriage. These children, with her, have no right to speak. Special race. Parasparrow licked his lips and smiled excitedly, hee. Sure, it should be sure. Even Doflamingo doesn't have the guts to lie to us. Hee. Knowing that the message came from Doflamingo, he nodded again, laughing to himself. Okay, at this moment, a trace of doubt flashed in Charlotte Linlin's eyes. What's wrong, Mom? Aware of Charlotte Linlin's doubts, Parasparrow asked quickly. Kaido? Parasparrow was startled, then turned his head, staring at Doris Rosa, who could already see the coastline ahead, with a red light in his eyes. But his sense of knowledge is obviously not as strong as that of his mother Charlotte Linlin, so he can't feel anything. It should be that guy. Charlotte Linlin opened her mouth and let out a big laugh, and Marine, that's. She thought for a while and said, Garp and Kizaru. Although it's been a long time since first fought against Marine, there are only a few peak powerhouses in this world. She certainly knows the aura of the strong man in Marine. Kaido's breath is not right at this time, is it suppressed by Marine? As if thinking of Kaido's deflated look, Charlotte Linlin opened her mouth and laughed out loud. Quadruple A. Seeing Charlotte Linlin laugh happily, Parasparrow also laughed out loud at the same time. If it's just Garp and Kizaru, they don't worry about it. With the strength of their mother, plus them, and Kaido on the island, Marine can't beat them. Although Mom and Kaido haven't seen each other for decades. But as the eldest son whose mother was still in the Rocks Pirates, he certainly knows the relationship between his mother and Kaido. Strictly speaking, they are more like siblings. Although we haven't seen each other for decades, Kaido, who has received a lot of kindness from his mother, will not be ungrateful. I'll go first, come here quickly, advertisement. Got it, Mom. Knowing that Kaido is in Dressrosa, it's clear Charlotte Linlin can't wait. Zeus. Charlotte Linlin waved her left hand and yelled, then jumped up from the bow to the sky. Here we come, Mom. At this moment, a white cloud wearing a red and blue-yellow brim cap emerged out of nowhere from her left hand, and quickly sank, just in time to catch the falling Charlotte Linlin. Mom, where are we going? Zeus asked with a smile. In fact, this guy is very powerful, but he is very timid and very afraid of Charlotte Linlin, but in order to survive, this guy will try his best to fight. As Charlotte Linlin, a special homies composed of fragments of her own soul, no one knows Charlotte Linlin's cruelty better than him. This guy also has a personality, that is, gluttony. Otherwise, in the original book, Nami would not be abducted by thunderclouds, and the weather stick will be fulfilled. Go to the island ahead. Charlotte Linlin waved forward. Yes, Mom. Zeus responded loudly, and then quickly flew towards Dressrosa in front with Charlotte Linlin's huge body on his back. In the air, Charlotte Linlin laughed as she flew. Quadruple A. As if to announce her arrival, a huge voice resounded through the entire sea. Of course, as she approaches, everyone on the island can feel her arrival. That unique laughter, no one does not know who is coming. Marine smiled. After all, it has nothing to do with them, they just came to watch the show. I just don't know if the silver-haired kid can be so relaxed in the face of 2-4 emperors. Although there is blue-haired Kuina, these are 2-4 emperors. No one knows who will win. Although silver hair can suppress Kaido, it may not be able to suppress 2-4 emperors. Of course, they hope that silver hair is still strong and keep Charlotte Linlin and Kaido here forever. But they also know that this can only be their fantasy. After all, these are 2-4 emperors, unless they team up with silver hair. But this can only be thought about, teaming up with Yinfa. Maybe Yinfa has to join forces with Kaido and Charlotte Linlin, and shoot them first. After all, silver hair is still a pirate, isn't it? Chapter 400. Sure enough, people are not the same. However, Garp and Kizaru, who have fought against Sorata and know more secrets, have different ideas from Marine behind him. It seems that 2-4 emperors' regiments will be buried here today. That's what they think. You know, Sorata has been useless, and only the two of them know that it killed Carter's in an instant, and the strange black energy they saw with their own eyes last time. They don't know what restrictions that black energy has on Sorata, but if they want to condense it and kill one of the 4 emperors in that weird space, it should be very easy for Sorata. Next, although Sorata may not be able to condense the second one, with the strength of him and the blue-haired Kuina, under the suppression of his weird space, Charlotte Linlin, no matter how powerful, it is impossible to resist. And with the silver-haired teleportation, Charlotte Linlin couldn't escape even if she wanted to. You must know that in this vast sea, one has demon fruit power and the other does not. This is inherently an unparalleled advantage. So when the two saw that Sorata had pinned Kaido down so easily, and also showed absolute defense. Just knowing that today, Charlotte Linlin came here to die. On the other side of the island, Doflamingo dodges the bullets fired by Arlo, a look of tiredness flashes in his eyes. These 3 guys, like indefatigable monsters, have been fighting all day and night, and they are still so energetic. He knew that it wasn't about how powerful these 3 guys were, but that the guy who turned into a white rabbit made amazing carrots. He had already learned from Virgo about the effect of Ahua's special radish, but he would never have imagined that this radish is so powerful. It is impossible for any of these 3 guys to be his opponent, but the tacit cooperation of the 3 of them made it impossible for him to defeat them one by one, and the addition of the carrot's recovery effect made him fall into infinite passivity. He knew that if this continued, these 3 guys would consume all of his energy and kill him. If his men are still there, of course he can also use manpower to besiege these 3 guys. But after he was freed from the silver-haired space domain, he sensed that his subordinates were all defeated by these 3 guys. Later, his subordinates recovered and wanted to help him, but they were blocked by the other 3 members of the Silver Hair Pirates. Although the 3 of Robin are not very strong, but Diamante and others are not in good condition, which makes the 3 of them fight against Diamante and others. Kuina knew that the 3 of Robin had Iowa's radish on them, and Diamante and others were in bad condition, so they didn't help. After all, it is a team. Although the 3 of Robin are not combatants, they still need to grow. Advertisement. Huge laughter spread throughout Dressrosa. It's coming, it's finally here. Doflamingo's tired eyes suddenly lit up. With Kaido and Charlotte Linlin, no matter how powerful the silver-haired guy is, he has to die. And there is Marine. Although Marine didn't do anything now, he had an order from the world government, and he didn't believe that Marine would let this opportunity go. Not doing it now should be reaping the benefits of the fishermen. Now that Charlotte Linlin is here, they have to do it even if they don't want to. However, what he didn't know was what order the world government gave Marine. I don't know how powerful Sorata is. He was still fantasizing that when the silver-haired kid was defeated, he would step on his head to avenge the previous humiliation. Um? Doflamingo's eyes were red, and he scanned another battlefield with knowledge. He wanted to see the battle situation there. Kaido is still there, judging by his aura, he is still fighting, but where is the silver-haired kid? And, in his perception, Kaido was fighting with two sharp swords. Is it a special space for the silver-haired kid again? You can even hide your own breath, making the color of knowledge invalid. Doflamingo was a little surprised, but only a little. Charlotte Linlin was coming soon. Let you live a little longer. Foo 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 foo. I don't know what he thought of, but this guy laughed excitedly. This made the three Yahuas who were fighting against him look at him with a little more pity. This guy can't be under too much mental pressure, he's crazy. Also, first he was humiliated by Sorata stepping on his head, then lying on the ground like a dead dog, watching them destroy the Don Quixote family, and then fighting with the three of them. After experiencing these, it is understandable that there are mental problems. Advertisement, but even though they thought so, their actions didn't change at all, and they had already followed Doflamingo, mercilessly killing each other. Palace Heights. Hearing this characteristic laughter, even though he had never seen it before, Kuina knew who it was. It's finally here. She waited here for Charlotte Linlin for a day and a night. Of course, she went down to have a meal in the middle. After all, she had to fight the strongest woman in the world, so she couldn't slack off. Looking out to the sea, looking at the sea where the clouds are gradually oppressed by the arrival of someone, a bright light flashed in Kuina's eyes. The light moves with the heart moves at will, and finally turns into a monstrous fighting spirit. The fighting spirit soared to the sky, and the monstrous sharpness unique to the swordsman spread throughout the entire Doris Rosa in an instant. This breath. It's blue hair Kuina. As soon as Kuina's breath was released, it instantly caught Marine's attention. How could it be so strong? The ghost spider stared in disbelief at the little black dot at the top of the palace heights. Apart from Kizaru here, he is the only one who has played against Kuina. To be honest, when he first heard that Kuina and Kizaru had fought for a day and a night, and they were inseparable, he didn't believe it. As a marine, no one knows the horror of the Marine 3 admirals better than the vice admirals. They are monsters among monsters with destructive power. What's more, the other one is Kuina who has fought against him. You must know that when he was on the mine island, he kept suppressing Kuina. If it weren't for Kuina's radish that can restore physical strength, if it wasn't for Kuina's breakthrough in the battle, their battle would not have any suspense at all. However, this is how long. How could someone have progressed to this point in such a short period of time? You must know that Kuina is not yet an adult at all. That's it now, then in the future. The ghost spider looked at the little black spot in the distance that made him feel frightened at this moment, and there was a hint of grayness in his eyes. Hey, sure enough, people are not the same as each other. Chapter 401 That another breath. To be honest, at this time, Kuina was a bit of a blow to the ghost spider. After all, he has experienced it himself. In such a short period of time, Kuina has gone from not being his opponent at all to the amazing progress he looks up to now. Compared to the ghost spider, the flying squirrel is much better. After all, he has never fought against Kuina. But even so, he was shocked by the speed at which Kuina's strength improved. Compared with Sorata, who appeared on the sea in an invincible posture at the beginning, without knowing the depth, Kuina, who undoubtedly has traces, is even more amazing. After all, the little girl was only 17 years old at this time. 17 years old. Thinking about what they were doing at the age of 17 and what strength they had, it gave them a feeling that they had spent their time living on dogs. Stronger. Kizaru and Garp glanced at each other, and they both saw a trace of emotion in each other's eyes. It's only been over a month, how did you do it? They do not know. Maybe it can only be described as a miracle. After all, this world lacks everything, and the most indispensable thing is miracles. A miracle born from the light of the human mind, this brat. In the field of space, Kaido stared at the figure like a sword reaching the sky at the top of the palace heights, with a trace of solemnity in his eyes. To be honest, he didn't pay much attention to Kuina before. Although he had read the news about Saboti Archipelago, he was Kizaru after all, and he understood everything. But now, he didn't dare to underestimate it. This momentum alone is beyond the reach of ordinary swordsmen. Besides. Click. Thunder was born out of thin air, and then countless thunder and lightning centered on Kuina and radiated outward, covering the entire sky in an instant. Thunderfruit. Clang, a stick swung away the jet of autumn water. Kaido's brows stretched and wrinkled again. Thunderfruit is no ordinary logia. This fruit is the one with the strongest title. The understanding of thunder and lightning, he is a person who can be entangled with conquerors, he still understands it very well. Compared to conqueror's tangled lightning, Thunderfruit's lightning is undoubtedly more powerful. Advertisement The unparalleled speed, attack power, and penetrating power endowed this fruit with too many possibilities. Marine 3 Admiral, none of them have conqueror's haki, but can fight with their kind with logia. One may not be their opponent, but two together can defeat them. This is the horror of logia. Except, of course, smokers, smoke fruit, and mara fruit. After all, in the later stage, individuals can set fire, making mara fruit popular among the whole people. In fact, it was just a joke. Although mara fruit is not as high as lava fruit in real attack, it is not a garbage fruit. After all, it is impossible for Ace to make a living in New World, offer a reward of 500 million, and even challenge Whitebeard for the garbage fruit. Anyway, at the time of Summit War, Ace was only 20 years old and he was far from his peak. If Ace is given time, with his aptitude, he will be at Admiral's level sooner or later. If that happens, no one will say anything. Mara Mara fruit dogs will not eat such words. After all, Sabo ate the Mara Mara fruit and got the title of Emperor Yan. And it is said that smoke fruit is weak, but is this thing really weak? For peak powerhouses like Sorata and the others, of course they were weak, so weak that they could be pinched to death with one finger. But how many peak powerhouses like Sorata and the others are in this world? And for Paradise and Sahai, where there is no hockey and there are very few hockey players, Smoker is like a big devil, who is his opponent. Haven't seen the future Double Four Emperors, Wan Luffy and Buggy whose name can't be read backwards, are he easily caught by him. In the world of One Piece, there are only 12 Logia fruits that are known and have appeared. The reason why it is invincible is because as long as you get one of this thing, even if you do nothing, you have already surpassed 99% of the people in this world. Pulling away, back to the topic. Open sea. Charlotte Linlin seemed to sense something, and the laughter stopped abruptly. This breath. After all, Kuina's fighting spirit was released on her, so his feeling is the clearest. Are you here to challenge me? She thought about it, but she didn't think of who this breath was, whether it was known or unknown, she didn't know. Is that the silver-haired kid? Advertisement. According to the information he has learned, the silver-haired kid can indeed be called a strong man. Otherwise it would be impossible for Doflamingo to ask for help, and she would not be able to make a trip in person. But if this aura is silver hair, then who is fighting Kaido? Although she couldn't sense Sorata's breath, she could sense Kaido's rising and falling breath. As soon as this breath is sensed, he knows that Kaido is fighting. Interesting. Whoosh! With a strong step on Zeus's back, Zeus instantly understood what Charlotte Linlin meant, his whole body stretched, and he flew faster. It was not too far away from Darius Rosa, drew a white arc in the air, and arrived in front of Darius Rosa in a blink of an eye. At the first glance here, I saw the completely destroyed town and the crack that split the entire Darius Rosa. Such a scene made Charlotte Linlin's eyes serious. She is not stupid, this scene shows the intensity of the battle and the strength of both sides. Thinking of Kaido, looking at this scene again, you can also know the strength of the person fighting Kaido. Who will it be? Turning her head to look at Marine standing on the side mound, Charlotte Linlin's eyes became more dignified. Only Garp and Kizaru had sensed the breath before. But now, there is a sharp aura on the island that makes her feel frightened, and there is another guy who fights Kaido but has no aura. If it's just Garp and Kizaru, she plus Kaido, don't bother. But if you add the other two, it's hard to say. She regretted a little, regretted not bringing her second son Katakuri here, although Perispero was not weak, but he couldn't help them at this level of battle. But it's useless to think too much, I still have to meet Kaido first. Ignoring Marine, Charlotte Linlin flew straight over the tumbler and into Darius Rosa. This is. The first time she came in, she saw that in the middle of the upside-down crater, Kaido was fighting with two black knives, with pink luster. In the air where Kaido was fighting with the knife, a little ghost wearing a white t-shirt, floral shorts, and silver hair was sitting leisurely cross-legged in the void. When he looked at the little ghost also turned to look at her. Those very blue pupils instantly let him know who this brat was. Silver hair. The other breath. Thinking of this, she turned her head to look at the high ground of the palace, and met Kuina's fighting eyes. Advertisement Chapter 402 Albuff's Spear. Widewhoa, another brat. Charlotte Linlin was a little surprised. The silver-haired kid is very young and very powerful. I knew this from the beginning, after all, he is a special race. It's also justifiable to be stronger. But what is this blue-haired kid? Judging by the breath, he was not inferior to her at all. Advertisement Speaking of the silver-haired kid, she turned to look at Kaido with serious eyes. It can be so powerful. He could see that Kaido was completely suppressed at this time. It's that weird space. Looking up, Charlotte Linlin's eyes fell on Sorata again. The first time he came here, he knew that Kaido had fallen into a strange space, and it seemed that the space should be created by the silver-haired kid. With Kaido's strength, she couldn't even come out, which made her full of shock. Although I haven't seen each other for decades, she is very clear about Kaido's potential, and she also has the fish fruit, phantom beast species, and blue dragon form that she gave. Even so, can't you rush out of that space? You still have the mood to pay attention to others, so you should pay attention to yourself. At this moment, Kuina, who turned into lightning, appeared directly in front of Charlotte Linlin. She leaned forward, holding the scabbard of head out Ichimon's in her left hand, pushed the knife cover with her thumb, and held the handle tightly with her right hand. She raised her head and fixed her eyes on Charlotte Linlin. It's fast, thunderfruit. Charlotte Linlin knew at a glance what fruit Kuina ate. No nonsense with Charlotte Linlin. Kuina has accumulated a day and night of fighting spirit, and released it all at this moment. One sword-style Ragindao Azure Dragon. Endless thunder shot out from him, filling the entire sky in an instant, and behind Kuina, a Thunder Dragon phantom wrapped in white light emerged out of thin air, and then directly hit Charlotte Linlin's chest. Little devil, you are too young to challenge me. Although her heart is serious and she already regards Kuina as an opponent, she doesn't say that. Napoleon. Charlotte Linlin raised her right hand above her head and pulled off her hat. In his hand, the hat quickly turned into a huge long sword, and then the blade of the long sword bent, and a big knife with a mouth and eyes grew on the body. Advertisement, Prometheus. Then Charlotte Linlin held the knife in both hands, and from her right hand, summoned a little sun with a mouth, nose and eyes. As soon as the little sun came out, it radiated dazzling light, and the air around it distorted visibly to the naked eye. Prometheus opened his eyes, flew straight to the great sword in Charlotte Linlin's hand, and quickly covered Napoleon. I saw that Napoleon's sword lengthened rapidly, and long fangs grew out of his big mouth. This moment looked particularly ferocious. This set of movements is very long, but in fact it is only a moment. Charlotte Linlin held the Emperor's sword composed of two hosmi, raised her head, and stared solemnly at the swiftly approaching green dragon. She could feel the sharpness of Kuina's attack, so she didn't intend to hold back and used all her strength. Holding the sword in both hands, around her body, a strong aura emanated from his body. Momentum affects the space. Click, thunder from the void. But this thunder, in front of Kuina's thunder, was obviously not enough, so it didn't cause any splashes. And Charlotte Linlin is obviously not trying to use the strength of the thunder. On her body, a wave of hockey lingering in purple-black thunder quickly wrapped around the Emperor's sword. The spear of Albaf Waigwo. Turning the blade, she swung it straight at Kuina, not like a slash, but like a football bat. Space warp. An extremely powerful shockwave broke through the shackles of space, pierced through the air, pierced through the thunder, and went towards Qinglong. Boom, the shockwaves of Qinglong and Waigwo collided in the air, and a shocking roar erupted. Amidst the thunder and lightning, an extremely strong shockwave radiated from the center of the battle to the surroundings. And the clouds in the sky that day were directly punched out of a big hole by this shockwave, and then the big hole spread, and colorful sunlight fell down. If there were no thunder roaring in the sky, all this would be a beautiful picture. It's so powerful. Behind Garp and Kizaru, Ghost Spider and the others stretched out their hands to block their eyes, raised their heads, squinted their eyes, and looked at the thunderous figure in the sky, full of sighs in their eyes. What was previously only speculation is now confirmed. Advertisement this strength, it's really scary. Kizaru pursed his lips, speaking for the Ghost Spider and others behind him. In the space realm, Kaido also looked up into the sky. His face was now extremely gloomy. He thought that if the old woman Charlotte Linlin came, he would be able to get out of trouble, but now it seems that even if it is Charlotte Linlin, it is impossible to help him out of trouble in a short time. He can be said to be very clear about Charlotte Linlin's strength. He also didn't expect that the blue-haired kid who ate thunder fruit could make Charlotte Linlin use his big move from the very beginning. Judging from the situation of the stalemate, even if the blue-haired kid fell into a disadvantage, it was not an existence that Charlotte Linlin could easily defeat. And there's that silver-haired kid in the sky, who knows what abilities he hasn't used yet. Trapped in this weird space, he always has a faint sense of crisis. This crisis is a bit inexplicable, as if the silver-haired kid has the ability to kill him right now. But it's not like there's no chance of getting away. Before he came here, he ordered Jin to come to Doris Rosa as soon as possible. It's been a day and a night, and they should be not far from here now. They have Doris Rosa's permanent pointer, so they don't need to detour at all. With Jin's strength, as long as they don't encounter extreme weather, they can come here quickly. As long as the strong men from his pirate group come over, plus the strong men brought by Charlotte Linlin, he can get out of trouble. At that time, as long as he joins hands with Linlin, no matter how powerful the silver-haired kid is, he will not believe that he can withstand their joint attack. Sorata looked down at Kaido's flickering face, a hint of sarcasm flashed in his eyes. No need to think about it, this guy is probably still waiting for his subordinates. Charlotte Linlin's subordinates, he could sense that there were no strong men, and the real man who was a good teacher, Mr. Katakuri, did not come. Others, no matter how many people come, they still deliver food. As for the beast's pirates, it's not that Kong has underestimated them, but if he wants, everyone will die when they come. Not everyone is Kaido, everyone is Garp, everyone is Kizaru, and can escape his teleportation. As long as you can't hide, you will be no different from an ant in front of him. Only the size is different. Chapter 403. Late, but even if you can escape, so what? Ants are always ants. Even bigger ants are still ants. Even if Mr. Katakuri, who met observation hockey from the future, comes, he still has to die. Boom, at this moment, the wrestling in the sky has already decided the winner. I saw Kuina's body, being pushed back by the shockwave. Kuina is still too young to lose to Charlotte Linlin's Conqueror's Tangle Shot, Albuff's Gun Waigwo, and it is understandable. However, the outcome is not calculated in this way. The reason why Logia is invincible is because even if he is hit by someone, he will not be hurt. I saw Kuina's retreating body suddenly turned into several lightning bolts in the air, shooting towards all directions, just avoiding the impact of the shockwave. Boom, a huge shockwave, much stronger than Kaido's dragon breath, blasted directly at Doris Rosa. Under the tremendous power, one of the islands that had already been split in half was torn apart in an instant, becoming countless fragments, large and small. Titan Country's unique attack, Waigwo, can be said to be the strongest move that humans can make in this world, the strongest move that can be played with only the strength of the physical body. At that time, when Sorata and the others left Lil Garden, they saw Dory and Brogy jointly cast it. Even if this thing knows the principle, ordinary people can't play it. First of all, it needs to be huge, and second, it needs to be strong enough to unleash such a powerful shockwave. After avoiding several thunderbolts from Wiguo, they gathered together again, revealing Kuina's figure. She stared at the completely shattered quarter of the island below, frowning slightly. As expected of being the strongest among women. This attack strength, if the average person can't handle it at all. Even at this moment, she couldn't take it, due to the strength of armament hockey, her slashing has not yet reached its peak, so it cannot cut through this unparalleled shockwave. Fortunately, she is not only a swordsman, but also a thunderfruit-capable person, otherwise this blow would seriously injure her. Blade Mother's flame. Far away. Charlotte Linlin retracted the knife, turned her head to look at Kuina, and grinned cruelly. Advertisement. She then swung the knife in Kuina's direction without hesitation. As the air twisted, a slash with a lot of flames, in the shape of a crescent moon, quickly slashed towards Kuina. Little ghost, what are you in a daze for? Do you want to die? Ah. Withdrawing her gaze, Kuina turned her head to look in the direction of Charlotte Linlin, her cold eyes were orange-red by the flames. Looking at the flame slash that was approaching rapidly, Kuina turned his right hand holding the knife and swung hard at the flame slash. Puff. She really can't cut Wei Guo at this time, but the normal attack in front of her is not enough for her. Slashing through the flames, revealing Charlotte Linlin behind, Kuina held a saber in her right hand. Ding, sheathed the knife. Then the body leaned forward, like drawing a knife, a large number of electric arcs appeared on the body, and instantly turned into a humanoid lightning with cyan electric arcs wrapped around the body. Thunder breath. She is now stronger than Charlotte Linlin, and only this unparalleled speed and melee can exercise her hockey very well, so at first she thought of melee with Charlotte Linlin. Boom, step your feet in the air. Boom, her body turned into a cyan light and shot straight at Charlotte Linlin. Arriving in front of Charlotte Linlin, the blue light condensed into a human form, and then swung the knife at Charlotte Linlin without hesitation. So fast. Even with Charlotte Linlin's knowledge, he was surprised by Kuina's speed. She is not an agility player, and she also knows that the kid in front of her is Thunderfruit, which makes many of her moves useless against the kid in front of her. But she is the four emperors after all. Although she has been busy giving birth to children and establishing nations in recent decades, she is also a member of the Rock's Pirates. When she was young, she still had a lot of battles. Coupled with her incomparable talent, her melee strength is not weak, so she can easily deal with the slightest movement. With her strength, she had reason to believe that as long as she really hit the brat, she would be able to end the battle quickly. Clang, advertisement. She swung the saber to counter Kuina's slash, but she didn't stop, her eyes glowed red, and she continued to swung the saber in another direction, just in time to hit another Kuina's slash. All of a sudden, countless clanging sounds resounded in the sky. I saw Charlotte Linlin standing on top of Zeus, waving around her body nonstop, waving a dense defensive net. And around her, countless cyan lights, connected into a line, were constantly spinning around her and attacking her. For a while, there was such a stalemate, Kuina couldn't break through Charlotte Linlin's defense. Charlotte Linlin couldn't hit Kuina, couldn't hurt Kuina, and no one could do anything to anyone. As time went on, Charlotte Linlin realized something was wrong. No, this brat is using me as a sharpening stone. She could feel Kuina hockey's lift. This made her very angry. But very helpless. If it was an ordinary Lobia, she wouldn't be so passive, but Kuina is the speed-type Lobia she hates the most, which makes her uncomfortable. Moreover, this brat was very cautious. Although he was fighting close to her, he was not at all stiff with him. The battle was always at the touch of a finger, making it impossible for her to catch her. Mom, what should I do? Homies can actually fight alone. Charlotte Linlin is not a swordsman, and her weapons are changed by homies. So after a short battle, she gave up control of Napoleon and Prometheus and let them free movement. But whether it's Prometheus, Zeus's lightning, or Napoleon's slash, nothing can be done with Kuina at all. After all, Kuina's strongest is not armament hockey, nor the realm of swordsmen, but observation hockey, which has reached its peak. Without human control, if these homies want to hit Kuina's body, it is just a dream. For Zeus, Charlotte Linlin couldn't think of how to break the situation. From the current point of view, it can only rely on physical strength. Go to the ground. After thinking about it, she gave an order to Zeus, and then wanted to fly to the ground. Above this sky, his flexibility is greatly restricted. After all, he is not really flying, but flying on Zeus, which is completely different from Kuina flying with his own ability. This point is nothing in front of ordinary battles, but it makes her a little uncomfortable in front of the peak powerhouse. I want to go. In the blue light, Kuina stared at Charlotte Linlin, murderous intent burst out of her cold eyes in an instant. Late. Chapter 404 Thunder Group, Magnetic Storm above the sky. Countless lines of blue light seem to form a circular cage, and the air around the cage is twisted. And above this piece of sky, blue electric arcs covered the entire sky, making this piece of sky completely become a sea of thunder and lightning, which made people shocking and scalp numb. Different from the battle between Sorata and Kaido, the battle between Kuina and Charlotte Linlin is more like a fight between gods, with every move and style carrying a breath of destruction. Since one mastered the thunder, and the other mastered the flame and thunder, the battle between the two gradually affected Darius Rosa's sky, causing the sky on this sea area to keep shaking. Such a scene made Greenbit, which is only connected to Darius Rosa by a suspension bridge, also change the sky. The hundreds of thousands of civilians who had long since hid in the bushes on the island were all staring blankly at the thunder and lightning flashing across the sky through the gaps in the trees. Is this something a human can do? They do not know. With their superficial knowledge, if we talk about the battle between Sorata and Kaido, they can't see it in Greenbit, they can only hear the sound, and they can't empathize with it. As for Kuina and Charlotte Linlin, the battle that affects the entire sea area, in their eyes, can only be described as a fight between gods. Listen to the earth-shattering roar coming from Derice Rosa. Everyone is praying in their hearts, praying that this battle will end soon. Of course, they are also very happy. Fortunately, they evacuated here. If they still stay in Derice Rosa, they can only wait to die under the battle of the gods. At this moment, they were full of gratitude to King Liku, and also felt deep apologies for their misunderstanding of King Liku these years. Everyone has one voice at this moment, that is, when the disaster is over, they will once again elect King Liku to be their king. Only King Liku can once again lead them to glory again. Well, the brats of today are too scary. Kizaru looked at the thunder and lightning covering the entire sky, and the ball surrounded by blue light, which looked like a distorted space cage from the outside. Charlotte Linlin inside might not be able to feel it, but they outside could clearly feel the shocking power in the cyan ball that Kuina covered with thunderous blue light. No one answered, everyone looked up solemnly and stared at the sky. Even Sorata and Kaido in the space realm are looking at the sky at this moment. Late? Advertisement. Charlotte Linlin frowned, looking at Kuina floating outside the blue light, her body distorted with the space. What's late? You'll know right away. Kuina looked at Charlotte Linlin, a cold light flashed in his eyes, then sheathed his knife, his body turned into lightning, and quickly backed away. Little devil, speak clearly. Seeing Kuina retreating, Charlotte Linlin didn't know why, so she wanted Zeus to chase her. Okay, at this moment, no matter how dull she was, she felt something was wrong. Mom, it's not good. At Charlotte Linlin's feet, Zeus looked in horror at the space in front of him that suddenly twisted into ultimate. This is, Charlotte Linlin raised her head, looking at the distorted space around which she could no longer see clearly, her body felt as if she had been stimulated by something, and was instantly covered with dark armament hockey. Kuina, who retreated to the distance, showed a figure, looked up at the place where the blue light ball was before, opened his mouth, and said indifferently. Thunder Group Magnetic Storm. Buzz buzz. The blue light ultimate distorted, and the endless arc instantly filled the entire sky, distorting the entire sky. And the center, viewed from the outside, has completely turned into a black hole, and Charlotte Linlin inside cannot be seen at all. When the space twisted to a certain limit, the entire huge cyan light group began to sag inward, and finally exploded with a bang. Boom, the huge roar directly shook the clouds above this sea area. The surface of the sea suddenly seemed to be under some pressure, sinking a few meters, and the huge squeeze formed a shocking wave, which was circular and quickly rolled back towards the opposite direction of the sea. Mother, Perisparrow and others who had just landed on the island all bent their waists slightly to resist the pressure from the sky, then raised their heads worriedly and looked at the center of the explosion. The aftermath of the battle alone made it difficult for them, let alone Charlotte Linlin, who was at the center of the explosion. No matter how confident they are and how much they believe in Charlotte Linlin, they can't help worrying about Charlotte Linlin. Advertisement. After all, this explosion was something they had never seen before. If the power of this explosion falls on an island, they have no doubt that it can instantly wipe out everything on an island. If they were in the center of the explosion, they would have no doubt that they should be dead. But that was Charlotte Linlin, one of the 4 emperors of the New World, their religion, their mother. So they believed that even in the midst of such a horrible explosion, their mother should be fine. Kuina, who was in the air, retreated again and again, and finally landed on the highest point of the palace heights. She stretched out her hand and fiddled with it, covering her bangs, looking up at the center of the explosion, with a satisfied smile in her eyes. After getting the thunder fruit, after many experiments, although this thunder is very powerful, it cannot be compared with the real thunder and lightning in nature. So Sorata customized the development direction for her from the very beginning. The first is of course acceleration. Ultimate speed corresponds naturally to invincible power. When the speed reaches a certain level, her strength is indeed beyond imagination. Compare her to Charlotte Linlin. The two of them are basically 2 species, and her strength is insignificant in front of the monster Charlotte Linlin. After all, the body shape is there. She wondered, if she hadn't got the thunder fruit, would she be able to break through Charlotte Linlin's defense with all her strength? But with the ultimate speed brought by thunder fruit, she can feel that although her strength is still far from that of Charlotte Linlin, it is not that great. At least in the breath of thunder state, she used all her strength to slash, and she could feel that she could break through Charlotte Linlin's defense and hurt her. Although her armament hockey has not yet reached its peak, armament hockey alone may still be difficult to hurt Charlotte Linlin, but coupled with the penetrating power brought by the compressed lightning, it is completely enough. This is the biggest change brought about by speed. The second point is to develop in the direction of electromagnetics. There are many developments in this area, such as electromagnetic waves, electromagnetic guns, electromagnetic knives. In fact, the ultimate acceleration of the breath of thunder also has electromagnetic capabilities. And she didn't expect that Charlotte Linlin would stand in the air and fight her for so long, making it easy for her to set up this shocking magnetic storm. At first, she didn't intend to use this trick. After all, the front swing of this thing is a bit long. No one would stand there stupidly to give the opponent time to arrange such a terrifying move. However, I don't know whether Charlotte Linlin is too proud or what, but actually stays in the sky where Kuina is home and entangles with her. Under such conditions, she naturally used this trick. Chapter 405. This is. The explosion that spread throughout the sky lasted for a while before stopping. Everyone looked at the sky, waiting. At this moment, a black ball-shaped figure, with a long white exhaust behind it, fell towards the island. Behind the ball, followed by three listless homies. At this time, homies' eyes were all closed tightly, as if they had exhausted their strength and passed out. They just followed their masters by instinct. Boom, the ball fell not far from the battlefield between Sorata and Kaido, and made a deep hole on the ground. All of a sudden, it attracted everyone's attention. "Do you died?" the flying squirrel murmured solemnly. Garp clenched his fist, turned his head to look at the deep pit covered by thick smoke, and said in a deep voice, "It's not so easy, you know. She is Charlotte Linlin, who is known as the Steel Balloon." Speaking of this, he glanced at Sorata, and sighed slightly. Before the silver-haired kid came out, the ceiling of human physical fitness was probably Charlotte Linlin. Although the attack of the little blue-haired girl is powerful enough, it is not enough to kill the ceiling of physical fitness. Okay. Flying Squirrel and the others nodded, expressing their understanding. Even so, everyone looked at Kuina with shock. After all, they had only seen the power of this explosion in their lives. They have no doubt that if they were the ones in the center of the explosion, they would have been completely turned into dust by now. Mother. At this time, Parasparrow rushed over from the shore with his younger brothers and sisters. When passing by Marine, they did not stop, but quickly passed Marine, and rushed straight to the place where Charlotte Linlin fell. How could this be? How could that brat be so strong? While running, Parasparrow looked up at Kuina, who was standing on the highest point of the palace heights, and then quickly looked away, looking at the place where his mother fell. Huh. This is. Behind the smoke, they saw a silver-haired kid sitting cross-legged in the air, and when they looked at Sorata, Sorata also turned to look at them. Advertisement C. This is silver hair. That. Parasparrow and the others stopped in the distance and looked under Sorata. When they saw the tall figure fighting with two flying knives in the strange space where the body was constantly broken, twisted and repaired, everyone was shocked. Kaido. Parasparrow lost his voice. This is being suppressed. How is this possible? You know this is Kaido, who is at the same level as Mom. How could he be suppressed? Parasparrow's face was full of disbelief. Parasparrow, big brother, let's go see Mom first. At this moment, behind Parasparrow, a tall, slender, extremely pale woman walked out. She wore a hat 3 times the size of his body, light blue hair, and a light blue dress with vertical stripes, with a red belt around her waist and a long sword stuck out of it. At this moment, a trace of anxiety appeared on her indifferent face. Parasparrow, big brother, if Mom goes into a coma and craves cravings, it's going to be bad. She is the third daughter of Charlotte Linlin, named Charlotte Armand. She is a snakehead tribe, so she is very tall and slender, and she is also a cruel female swordsman. This time in Derice Rosa, only she and Parasparrow are not bad, and the others can be ignored. I don't know what Charlotte Linlin thinks, she didn't bring a single star, what arrogance. They saw Kaido, and of course Kaido saw them. To be honest, Kaido's mentality is somewhat broken at this time. He doesn't want to talk. The old woman can come, but at least you have to bring some strong people. These are all crooked melons and dates. Parasparrow, the eldest son of Charlotte Linlin, he knew, not only knew, he even hugged this kid when he was a child. And it's been decades, and you only have this little strength. Compared with this kid's younger brother Katakuri, it's not a star and a half. With such little strength, you came here to deliver food, didn't you? Advertisement, hey, Kaido sighed inwardly, and glanced at the sea. I can only hope that Jin will come as soon as possible. He tried many methods, even using conquerors to directly penetrate this weird space, and really rushed out, but the silver-haired kid in the sky seemed to be everywhere. He went out, but he didn't seem to go out, because he came from this. If you go out of one layer of space, you will immediately fall into another layer of space. It seems that this space is really endless, and looking at the relaxed look of the silver-haired kid, it seems that the formation of this space is as simple as eating and drinking for him. What the hell? And he wants to break the space. It's very easy, just wrap around hockey and hit it with a hammer, but to break through the space, he has to use all his strength. Regardless of whether it is smashed or pierced, it is a waste of energy. Originally in this weird space, under the ubiquitous pressure, coupled with the 2 surprisingly fast-throwing knives, his physical strength was already exhausted. So after trying many ways but failing to break out of this weird space, he stopped doing these useless efforts and could only pin his hopes on Charlotte Linlin and the people she brought. However, what he didn't expect was that Charlotte Linlin was knocked down from the sky in just a few minutes, or how long. He knew that the shocking explosion, although very strong, could not just kill the old woman, but in this kind of explosion, even an old woman would be injured. Even if you are not injured, your physical strength will be exhausted. How to fight this next? Even he didn't expect that blue-haired brat to be so strong. What kind of monsters are these 2 brats? The strong desire to complain was suppressed in his heart. Now is not the time to think about this. I just hope that Charlotte Linlin won't be hurt too badly, and I have to send a message back to shake people. To be honest, for someone like him, shaking people is somewhat shameful. But they have all fallen into this situation. Even if they are the world's top powerhouses, even if they are 4 emperors, they have to call their subordinates for rescue. Otherwise, the 2 brothers and sisters of the 2 of them may have to fall in this little Derice Rosa today. This is. At this moment, whether it was Kaido, Marine, or Parasparrow and others who were rushing towards the place where Charlotte Linlin fell, they all stared at the deep pit where Charlotte Linlin fell in amazement. Whoops! A bolt of lightning passed through the void at an extremely fast speed and came to Sorata's side. Kuina stepped out of the electric current. He stood beside Sorata, holding the scabbard in his left hand and the handle of the head Aoyuan in his right hand. He looked down at the deep pit not far away, with a trace of solemnity in his eyes. Chapter 406. Eating Disorder. Doris Rosa. It was completely broken at this point. Even the highlands of the palace were blown down by the shockwave generated by the explosion in Kuina's shocking magnetic storm. In the battle between Doflamingo and Awa, the four of them had stopped for the time being. After all, the previous explosion was too strong, and even they were affected to some extent. At this time, the movement gradually quieted down, and it was Ahua and the others who made the first move, and they would not give Doflamingo a chance to breathe. Doflamingo looked at the three of Awa who had just been quiet for a while, and then rushed towards him. His tone was hurried, and he didn't know what to say. What, Shichibukai, is this the only level? Ahua taunted Doflamingo, then rushed to Doflamingo, raised his huge white beast fist without hesitation, and smashed it on Doflamingo's head. If that's all there is to it, then you'd better die. Little devil, don't be too arrogant. Boom, when fist meets fist, a strong shockwave erupts. Doflamingo raised his head and stared at Ahua's blood-red pupils, with blue veins popping out of his forehead. Who do you think you are? If it weren't for your weird carrot, would you still be able to stand in front of Lousy? It's really not, but what can you do with us? At this moment, a Dao's huge body appeared behind Doflamingo. He grinned and said frantically, "You are indeed very powerful. You are the strongest enemy we have encountered so far when we went to sea, but it is just a sharpening stone on our growth path. Do you really think you are still that Doris Rosa's king, Shichibukai? It's just the sandbags and experience bags left by Sorata. What are you doing here?" Without any hesitation, he lifted Kyoka Suigetsu high and struck Doflamingo on the head. Clang, the blade slashed at the thread pulled up by Doflamingo's other hand. This silk thread is very thin, but it is all black, and it is extremely tough. Whether it's a Dao's slash, or a Hua's fist, or a Luo's bullets, they all hit continuously, which is also miraculous. Advertisement. Doflamingo didn't dare to entangle, especially a Dao. He didn't even dare to answer a Dao's words, and he didn't dare to visit a Dao. This kid with cat eyes, he was fooled once. If he hadn't developed string fruit to the point of awakening and being able to mend wounds, maybe he would have died the last time he met the eyes of this brat. While coping with the close combat between a Dao and a Wa, while avoiding the bullets that a Luo shoots from time to time, he looked anxiously at the other direction of the palace heights. What exactly is going on? Kaido's fight, he can still feel it, but Charlotte and Linlin. This is Charlotte Linlin, one of the four emperors. Who knows, the blue-haired kid gave him such a big move as soon as Doris Rosa came. And was hit head-on. Thinking of the shocking explosion before, and thinking that even he would die in an explosion, he couldn't help worrying about Charlotte Linlin. Not worried about Charlotte Linlin, but concerned about what if Charlotte Linlin and Kaido lose. It's been so long, Marine has been here for so long, and I haven't done anything. He didn't do anything for so long, he knew that it should be the world government, and he didn't give an order at all. Order Marine to attack the silver-haired gang. He probably knew what Marine was here for this time. Watch it play. Good. At this moment, Doflamingo no longer had the previous luck. If Marine didn't do anything, the four emperors would be at a disadvantage. Looking at it now, his chances of survival are probably close to zero. Since I can't escape, let you be buried with me. Doflamingo was furious in his heart, and instead of avoiding it, he showed his blood and started a real life and death battle with the three of Ahua. Facing the sudden change of Doflamingo at the beginning, the three were caught off guard and fell into a disadvantage for a while. But when the three got used to it, their battle gradually became peaceful again. Advertisement. After all, if Doflamingo can't instantly kill one of the three, he can't break the tacit balance of the three. In fact, this battle has been doomed since the breakthrough of Awa and the three of them, and that is to fight for consumption. After all, neither side can defeat the other in a short time. The other side of the highlands. Sorata, this breath? Eating disorder. Sorata looked down at the pit where Charlotte Linlin fell, and could feel the ultimate's evil aura in the pit, which was an extremely chaotic, tyrannical aura. In his perception, there seemed to be a real beast in that pothole, and this beast was slowly waking up now, and was about to come out to look for food. What is cravings? Kuina said suspiciously. I feel her aura is more terrifying than when I was fighting with me before, but this aura is too chaotic. I suspect that she is irrational at this time. Sorata stretched out her right hand and rubbed the stubble of her chin with her thumb. After a while, she replied, actually, I don't know what it is. Just treat her as a mental illness. The cause of this illness is unknown. When the attack occurs, there is a special craving for a specific food. Putting down his hand, Sorata picked up the wine gourd, raised his head and took a sip, then looked down at the pothole, and said with a smile. It should be your previous explosion, which caused him to consume too much energy and fell into a short coma. What did I see in the coma, which must have triggered the onset of cravings? After this thing gets sick, the strength will indeed increase, but it's irrational. She won't get better until she eats what she wants. Has the strength increased? Kuina looked at the pothole, with a flash of fighting spirit in his eyes. It's better to strengthen it, and it can train hockey better. You still have to be careful, Sorata chuckled. Although she is not very rational now, she will not hesitate to attack anyone who stands in front of her, and the attack that comes from instinct, on the contrary, you should be more careful and more careful. Not to be underestimated. Strengthening strength, fighting instinctively, maybe she is more dangerous now than when she was rational. Regarding Sorata's words, Kuina tilted her head to look at Sorata, smiled softly, and nodded, I see. Thinking, craving, it's craving. Pei Ross, Perot and the others stopped and did not dare to move forward. As Charlotte Linland's son and daughter, no one knew better than them how terrible his mother's illness was. As long as the mother's craving disorder breaks out, she will turn into an irrational monster. Even if they are the children of Charlotte Linland, the mother will not hesitate to kill them. Chapter 407 I didn't expect it to happen at this time. Marine. The Marines who came to Doris Rosa this time are not newcomers, even the rear admirals are all veterans. Although many people have never seen it, they have heard of it, so after feeling the chaotic and tyrannical atmosphere, the name of this symptom popped up in their hearts. Now there's a good show to watch. Marines look forward to it. Whether Charlotte Linland gets sick or not has nothing to do with them. Anyway, there is no one in Doris Rosa now, so they can do whatever they want. What should I do? Ross Perot big brother. Charlotte Armand looked at Ross Perot anxiously. Mom is sick at this time. It is impossible for the chef on board to make food that satisfies mother. It's okay if it's in Cake Island, where there are 3 stars, countless chefs from all over the world, and the chief chef, long bread. As long as mom wants to eat, they can make it quickly. What should I do? I don't know either. Even Charlotte Linland's eldest son, Perot, is full of anxiety at the moment. Come on, let's go back to the boat first, and then ask Katakuri and the others for help. Mom is in a bad state at this time, and that Silverhair is suppressing Kaido. With our strength, we can't help mother at all. We can only let Katakuri and the others come to support us, and let them bring the head chef and the chef team. After saying this, Pei Ross took his younger brothers and sisters and returned to the huge sailboat parked on the shore along the original road. At this moment, Charlotte Linland woke up completely. Cake, cake, cake. In the pit, there was a low-pitched murmur like a devil, and an extremely chaotic and tyrannical atmosphere filled the entire Doris Rosa in an instant. Hurry up. At this moment, Perot and the others moved even faster. Boom, the pothole exploded, and a head was covered with orange flames, holding a ferocious big knife in his hand, and a dark figure with a cloud of lightning emerged behind him. The smoke and dust dissipated. At this moment, Charlotte Linland's eyes were devoid of reason, and they were blood red. Even her orange pupils were stained red by the blood. She looked better than when she first came to Doris Rosa, lost a whole circle of weight, but that violent breath became even stronger. No wonder you get sick. Sorata looked at Charlotte Linland with a hint of understanding in her eyes. Advertisement Charlotte Linland should squeeze the strength of her body and bear Kuina's magnetic storm attack. This kind of squeezing force greatly improved her strength, but what followed was the starvation of her body cells. This hunger overwhelmed Charlotte Linland's sanity and caused her to explode. At this moment, Charlotte Linland suddenly raised her head, opened her mouth, and let out a meaningless roar. This voice was very sharp, with very strong mental oppression, and even more shockwaves, instantly permeating the entire Doris Rosa. The rest of the people on the island at this time are not ordinary people. Although Charlotte Linland's unconscious roar is very oppressive, it is nothing to them. Kuina stared at Charlotte Linland, frowning slightly. Such Charlotte Linland made her not know what to do for a while. Forget it, never mind. Shaking her head, she leaned forward, her body was filled with electric arcs, and then her whole body turned into a bolt of lightning, rushing straight at Charlotte Linland. Boom, one big, one small, the 2 figures collided directly. At this time, Charlotte Linland, just as they thought, completely lost her mind and left all the fighting to her instincts, but just like this, her fighting changed drastically. Stronger strength, faster reaction, and connection with homies made Charlotte Linland stronger than before she had the disease. Cake, cake, cake. Charlotte Linland looked at Kuina with ultimate greed in her eyes, as if Kuina had turned into the cake she kept screaming at. At this time, she exuded the ultimate malice, which made Kuina, who was fighting her, feel palpitations from the bottom of her heart. Bang bang bang. The battle between the two was much more dynamic than Sorata's, and another piece of the island was shattered in a short while. With Doris Rosa's tenacity at this time, when they finish fighting, I'm afraid the entire Doris Rosa will be reduced to pieces. Fortunately, Doris Rosa is formed by 2 islands. Even if the main island is broken, the people of the kingdom of Doris Rosa can live on another island. And Sorata will not really let Kuina and Charlotte Linland destroy the entire island, so the survival of the people of Doris Rosa is still very secure. Kaido. Sorata retracted the 2 knives, letting them hover on either side of his body, then looked down at Kaido, and asked calmly, do you know Joey Bowie? Advertisement, Joey Bowie? Kaido was taken aback, his serious face was a little bit tense under this question. How do you know about Joey Bowie? Me? Sorata rubbed her chin in thought for a moment, raised her head, and said with a light smile, I said, I knew it from birth, I don't know if you believe it or not. Stop kidding, kid. Obviously, Kaido wouldn't believe such a nonsense reason. Okay. Suddenly seemed to think of something, Kaido fell silent. This guy is so powerful that he can suppress him. It seems that his chance of winning in this weird space is less than 10%. Even if Jin brought someone with him, the the probability of him escaping from this space is pitifully small. Being trapped in this weird space is like falling into an infinite swamp of pressure. Regarding Jin's strength, he knew that he could move in this space, but it was not as easy as him. So from the very beginning, he knew that going out would be very difficult. As for Charlotte Linlin, the old woman can't save herself now, so she can still save him. Lost. Completely defeated. I didn't expect him to lose so completely. Kaido raised his head, looked at Sorata sitting in the air like a true god with complicated eyes, and said in a difficult tone, "You are." After speaking, his tone was affirmative. "Joey Bowie." Sorata widened her eyes, leaned forward, looked at Kaido, pointed to her head and asked in surprise, "I'm Joey Boy?" "Okay." Kaido nodded. "The only person who can beat me is Joey Boy. Although I don't know why you are different from what I remember, but I think only Joey Boy can have such amazing strength at your age." The more Kaido said, the more certain he became. In the end, he kept nodding his head to prove that his guess was correct. Chapter 408 I won't tell you. Sorata looked at Kaido as if he was convinced that he must be Joey Boy, and put his hand on his forehead speechlessly. "I'm Joey Bowie. Why didn't I know?" This guy didn't believe what I said just now. I knew Joey Bowie from birth. He doesn't know who Joey Bowie was 800 years ago, but of course he knows who Joey Bowie will be 3 years later. Not necessarily. His appearance, for this world, has actually completely disrupted the established timeline of this world. Wong Luffy may still go to sea, but after going to sea, it is hard to say if he is still the One Piece. After all, when he reaches the final island, isn't he the One Piece of this world? At that point, he can change his name. Change it to what? Otherwise it's called Air Poseidon. Air Poseidon, Air Poseidon, Air Poseidon. Ha 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 ha. As if thinking of something funny, Sorata laughed out loud under Kaido's inexplicable eyes. What is this guy thinking again? Kaido looked puzzled. This kid can't really be Joey Boy, can he? The smile now was a bit like it. He didn't know much about Joey Boy, but that was his childhood dream, to be Joey Boy. But when he grew up, he knew that he was not and could not be Joey Boy, so this ideal was buried in the deepest part of his heart. And he can't become Joey Boy, but he can become the person who awakens Joey Boy, which he doesn't know, and it's impossible to know. Sorata's laughter stopped abruptly. He put down his hand, looked at Kaido again, and said, "Okay, let's not talk about it. We probably know the same thing about Joey Bowie. That thing is just the light of human fantasy hope. I don't know the specific conditions for his appearance, but I do know a little bit. I'm not talking to you about these. If you want to say that in this world, apart from world government, who knows the world most thoroughly, it must be Vegapunk. This guy can even make devil fruit." The fruit Momonosuke ate was exactly the same except the color was different from that of Kaido. Advertisement. Since devil fruit can be copied, it must have analyzed the composition of devil fruit and know how devil fruit was born. With his knowledge and the books he has come into contact with, it is not an exaggeration to say that he is the strongest human being who can analyze the world. As long as Sorata finds him, she may be able to learn from him many secrets that seem complicated now but are actually very simple. To be honest, Sorata has no interest in learning about history. No matter how magnificent and thrilling it is the past, not the future, and has nothing to do with them at this time. But the understanding of the world can get the answer from devil fruit, which he is very interested in. Looking at Kaido, the smile in Sorata's eyes gradually disappeared and became indifferent. Kaido seemed to feel something too. Holding the mace tightly in both hands, he raised his head and looked at Sorata, his whole body exuding the aura of death. A long time ago, he felt a fatal crisis in this strange space, which made him know that this kid must have some special ability that he has not used. Although this strange space is powerful, it doesn't actually pose much threat to him. Then, what would bring him a fatal crisis? Little devil, I know I may not be able to leave today, but if you want to kill me easily, it depends on whether you have the ability. Worororo. He laughed out loud at this point. Come on, come and kill me. Worororo. Looking at Kaido who was laughing wildly, Sorata's eyes were calm without any waves. By now, he should really send Kaido to hell. It is very difficult for others to kill Kaido. This guy has thick skin and thick flesh, and ordinary swords can't break through defense at all. To hurt this guy, Haki has to practice to the emission level, and only when he can hurt the inside can he really hurt him. But to really break the defense and leave a wound on this guy, ultimate swordsman attack can do it. This is also the reason why this guy has only 2 wounds on his body after fighting countless times over the years. Sorata withdrew her gaze, stretched out her hand, and raised it in front of her. I saw him open his palm with the palm facing up, and a special wave came out from his palm. He looked at his palm with a serious expression. Advertisement. I really don't intend to let you wait for your subordinates, because that is meaningless. In fact, since you came to Doris Rosa, your life has entered a countdown. I don't want to kill you so early. I think you know the reason. Speaking of which, in his palm, the space collapsed rapidly, like a funnel, and the surrounding space was distorted, flowing inward continuously. In the end, no light could be seen anywhere, only a dark hole could be seen. The dark hole was very small, there was no earth-shattering, no thunder and lightning, and no trace of aura was revealed. But like the entrance to hell, it instantly attracted all of Kaido's mind, making him feel like his soul would sink into it. And at this moment, a sense of crisis arose in his heart, the sense of crisis that he was facing the greatest crisis in his life, and the hairs on his body stood on end at this moment. What is this? Kaido didn't pay attention to other things, his whole heart Shendu was on Sorata's palm at this moment. This one? Sorata looked at the black hole on the palm, the corners of her mouth turned up slightly, she turned her head to look down at Kaido and said with a smile. This is. What is it? Not only Kaido wants to know, but even Marine in the distance also wants to know. Garp and Kizaru looked over the first time Sorata used the black hole energy. That special wave, although breathless, carried an extremely deadly feeling, making them instantly sense what Sorata was doing at this moment. So when they heard Sorata explaining what the black energy was, they all listened carefully. Looking at Kaido, and feeling the knowledge-seeking gaze from Marine behind him, Sorata twitched his mouth and laughed loudly. This is. I won't tell you. Ha 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 ha. Sorata is talking about you, not you, of course she is talking about Marine. Damn brat. The corner of Kizaru's mouth twitched, and his mood suddenly became unbeautiful. Garp shook his head helplessly. For such an important matter, it makes sense for the kid not to say anything. Kaido was going to be more irritable, he glared at Sorata, holding the mace tightly with both hands. The purple-red thunder was shining around his body, he was ready to strike at any time. Chapter 409 Teacher Guy is offline. Sorata shook her head. It's not that he doesn't want to say it, it's that he still hasn't understood what this black energy is. After all, he didn't even understand his own body yet. It is said that he is the energy of the black hole, but how can the black hole be so easy to produce? This thing was made out of his collapsed space, and it is like a black hole, so it is called black hole energy. As for what it is, he really doesn't know. Okay, I won't joke with you anymore. Sorata grasped the pitch-black black hole with her right hand, and then pulled it to the side with all her strength. In front of him, a sharp black sword was gradually pulled out of the void by him. The pitch-black sharp sword is black as a hole, as if it can swallow everything in the world, which makes people who see it shocking. Sorata held the handle of the blade of space, stood up slowly, and then swung his right hand lightly to the right. Puff, the space is like paper, which can be easily broken. The opening is black, but it is different from the darkness like the space blade, which swallows even the light, with a little gray. This kind of attack power. Behind Garp, the flying squirrel and ghost spider saw Sorata's space blade for the first time. Just by looking at it, there was a tingling feeling in the soul, which made them feel the crisis of life and death even if they were so far apart. And the cut space made them even more terrified. They could see clearly that the space that could not be closed for a long time did not cut through the air, but really cut through the space. This kind of sharpness, if it is scratched on a person. Thinking of this, everyone shuddered collectively. Even Kaido must die. The flying squirrel and ghost spider looked at each other, and they both saw the seriousness in each other's eyes. No wonder that after Mr. Garp came back last time, Marine gave another order from top to bottom, to go as far as he meets Silver Hair in the future, and not to touch him lightly. Thinking back to the last Saboti archipelago, not only Mr. Garp couldn't help Mr. Garp with Silver Hair, but Mr. Garp had to be given Silver Hair too. Thinking of this, the two felt a little melancholy. Such a powerful character appeared in Pirates, but Marine didn't respond at all. What should we do next? Even if 4 emperors were to die, they witnessed a more powerful silver-haired one. Hey, Sorata couldn't hear Marine's sigh, and even if he did, he wouldn't take it seriously. Turning the sword, he stared at Kaido and walked down. Boom, advertisement boom, boom. Every step he took stepped on the space, leaving circles of ripples in the void. As he fell, Kaido's aura became more and more powerful, and the space around his body distorted with his powerful aura. Kaido looked up at Sorata, who was approaching him step by step, just like a mortal, without showing a trace of momentum. His eyes burst out with monstrous hostility. If you want to kill me, then come. Holding the mace in both hands, he stepped forward with his right foot. Boom, the ground caved in. The mace hit Sorata hard from right to left, from bottom to top. Bang, the space domain shattered like a mirror, and the huge mace was entwined with purple-red lightning. With a click, it pierced through the space and appeared directly on Sorata's left waist. Sorata continued to walk towards Kaido as if she hadn't seen the mace. Boom, the mace hit Sorata's left waist fiercely, and there was a terrifying roar. The huge shockwave seemed to have hit an impenetrable barrier, and could no longer move forward, so it could only go upstream. The shockwave entwined with purple-red lightning soared into the sky, broke through the clouds, and then exploded in the air. Boom, the sky vibrated, bringing the ultimate airburst. Okay. Sorata raised her head, stared at Kaido, her tone was calm. How could it be good? Who is lousy? Lousy is Kaido. Even if he dies, he has to die standing up. Kaido stared at Sorata, retracted his hands, without the suppression of the space domain, stronger strength, faster speed, which gave him a little confidence in his heart. So he didn't flinch at all, holding the mace in both hands, and smashed it towards Sorata again. Even if he knew it was useless. But who is he? As he said, he is Kaido. Even if he dies, he will die standing up. Looking at Kaido, Sorata's eyes turned cold, and he swung the space blade with his right hand. Puff. The huge arm holding the huge mace broke straight away, and slid back from Sorata's left. Ultimate's pain instantly spread to Kaido's mind, but he didn't pay attention to the pain at the moment. As for the weird black sword that brought him the ultimate crisis, he knew it would have this end as soon as it appeared, so it was not surprising. He fixed his eyes on Sorata, and his huge head jerked forward, bumping into Sorata. Without his hands, he still has a head and feet. Advertisement. Even in death, he is still a hero. Looking at the head that was approaching quickly, Sorata made a backhand sword without any hesitation. Puff. The pitch-black sharp blade easily sliced through Kaido's neck, leaving a long space crack in the air. Kaido's body fell silent instantly. He stared at Sorata and opened his mouth to say something, but the space crack that cut off his head made him unable to utter a word after all. The light in his eyes dimmed rapidly. He wanted to turn his head and look at Wano Kuni. At this time, he thought of Jin. Jin is not so much his subordinate as his only friend. He is not only the first partner he invites, but also the only one who knows his ideal. It is also this ideal that Jin follows him. It's just that as time went by, he finally failed Jin. Jin didn't say anything, and still supported him as before. Goodbye, my friend. Hope you don't come to Rosa. At this moment, he regretted a little bit. When he regretted leaving, let Jin come to pick him up and take him home. The last gleam of light in his eyes disappeared, and Kaido's huge body fell backwards. Boom, body and head separated, dead, just like this. The flying squirrel and the others looked at Kaido's huge body in disbelief. You know, that's 4 emperors. He was beheaded by silver hair. They knew that the strange black long sword in Sorata's hand was extraordinary, but they didn't know that he killed Kaido so easily. This is too crazy. When everyone looked at Sorata again, they subconsciously avoided the space blade in his hand. It's so G pervert. Killing Kaido is no different than killing a pig. Not to mention the flying squirrel and others, even Garp and Kizaru were shocked. After all, although they had seen Sorata's space blade, they hadn't actually seen Sorata use it. No wonder Carteris was instantly killed. Garp and Kizaru looked at Kaido's body and sighed inwardly. Facing this thing, let alone Kaido and Carteris, even they will end up in the same way. Chapter 410 Jin. Just when everyone looked at Kaido's huge body and sighed. A pitch-black figure with wings wrapped in flames slid across the sky and appeared on the battlefield. Sorata didn't look at the figure in the sky, he looked down at Kaido, holding the space blade in his right hand and opening his palm upwards. I saw the pitch-black space blade in his palm, spinning continuously, then gradually shrunk, and finally turned into a glass ball, which he put into the space bag. In the same way, he also put away the autumn water that had been floating on his right, and then held the handle of Zhang Kong's knife, then raised his head and looked at the black figure in the sky. The person who came was wearing black double-breasted clothes, black pants, a black mask and a helmet with goggles on his head, a long knife hanging on his waist, and a pair of jet black wings flapping in the air behind him, making him he levitates. On the back of his head, there is still a group of flames surrounding him, making him look like a god in mythology. It's just that the god at this time was a little flustered and a little shocked, as if he had seen something unbelievable, even a little unbelievable. Jin. The person here is Jin, whose real name is Abel, the big sign of Beast's pirates, the first of the 3 great disasters, nicknamed Flame Disaster. He was the first person to follow Kaido, and also Kaido's most valued subordinate, known by Kaido as his right hand. I should follow the example of my predecessors Roger and Rayleigh, and try to be like them too. Unfortunately, whether it is strength or luck, their combination is far from Roger and Rayleigh. The bounty for this guy is as high as 1.39 billion berry. He is an ability user of dragon fruit ancient species pteranodon form. And he himself is a remnant of the special race, Lunaria, that has disappeared from history and can emit flames. According to legend, the Lunaria tribe is a rare race that lives in the Red Line. They were the aborigines of the God's Kingdom, on the Red Line before the celestial dragons. Now, they have been completely wiped out. Except for Jin, there is no one left. And Sorata not only knew that this guy was from the Lunaria tribe, but also knew that this guy was caught by the world government as a test object when he was a child. It was also at that time that he met Kaido, who was also captured by the world government. The only difference is that Kaido took the initiative to trouble Marine and was caught. It was also at that time that he met Kaido, was rescued by Kaido's jailbreak, and then became the first crew member of Kaido's Beast's Pirates, which he has been up to now. To be honest, Sorata sometimes admires the charisma of these guys. No matter good or bad, these guys always have a group of subordinates who are willing to die for them. Kaido did it, Charlotte Linlin did it, Doflamingo did it. Just like Jin at this time, seeing Kaido's body, the first thing he did was not to run away, but to look for the beast. No need to look, Sorata, who was standing in front of Kaido's body and received the knife, naturally became his first object of suspicion. Advertisement because Kaido's goal this time is Sorata. And Sorata's silver hair and distinctive blue pupils made him recognize Sorata at a glance. Without hesitation, Jin flapped his wings, and with a squeaky sound, he drew out the big knife at his waist, and then the flames behind his head seemed to come alive, quickly spreading from the back of his head to his entire body, and wrapped around the big knife, making his whole body instantly turned into a burning man. Then he held the knife in both hands, aimed at Sorata with the tip of the knife, flapped his wings violently, his whole body turned into a flame, and shot down at Sorata rapidly. Even if he knows that the kid below can kill Kaido, it is definitely not a strong man he can fight against. But that's no reason for him to flee without a fight. Kaido is not only his boss, but also the faith he has always believed in. Ever since Kaido escaped from that lab decades ago, he decided to dedicate his life to Kaido. Kaido is the Joey boy he believes, destined to change the world, and destined to be the One Piece who overwhelms the entire sea. But now, faith has fallen, Joey boy is dead, he was beheaded to death right in front of him, and he swore to follow Kaido all his life. How could he turn around and run away? Guardian Fire Dragon Emperor. Jin's body became faster, and finally turned into a fire dragon. The fire dragon came to life, as if Kaido was resurrected, opened his mouth and roared silently, and slammed straight into Sorata. Sorata raised his head, his pale blue pupils were reddened by the firelight, but his expression didn't change at all. He could feel Jin's determination at this moment, but if this world could achieve things with just determination, there wouldn't be so many tragedies. Jin is different from One Luffy, he is not the protagonist, and it is impossible for him to have endless power that can explode seeds, even if he is the strongest strike now, but in front of Sorata. Sorata extended her right hand, index finger pointing forward. Boom, the fiery flames are kept out by a transparent hockey defense. The flame impact separated automatically, rushing from both sides of Sorata's body to the ground behind him, leaving 2 long black marks on the ground behind him. After a while, the fire dragon disappeared, revealing the tip of the sword and Jin holding the long sword in both hands and trying to stab it, but was blocked by Sorata's index finger. So angry? Sorata looked at the crater-like eyes under Jin's mask and spoke calmly. Advertisement, win the king and lose the bandit. 17 years ago, wasn't that how you crushed Wano Kuni? As if thinking of something, the corners of Sorata's mouth turned up, and he jokingly said, "Oh, wrong, it shouldn't be like this. I'm crushing like this. You're combining strength with strategy." Having said that, he shook his head funny, it's not the same, it's not the same, it's not the same at all. Jin didn't speak. During this time, he used all his strength, but he couldn't make any progress in the face of the finger wrapped around hockey. Only by facing it in person can he feel the true strength of the brat in front of him. The gap between them is like a chasm, an abyss chasm that he simply cannot cross. He tilted his head to look at Kaido who was lying on the ground, and looked at his eyes that were still glaring even if he died. There was a trace of sadness in Jin's eyes, which was then replaced by firmness. He turned his head to look at Sorata again, and his huge head instantly turned into that of a pterosaur. Then the head was quickly pulled back like a slingshot, and when it was pulled to a certain extent, it was released, and the huge beak, like a sharp sword, shot towards Sorata's head. It's really courting death. Staring at the swiftly coming sharp beak, the smile on Sorata's face disappeared, and his eyes turned cold. Boom, he didn't hide at all. The huge beak hit Sorata in front of him, just like hitting an invisible barrier, and he couldn't move forward anymore. The cold knife light, like a crescent moon hanging upside down, cut across Jin's leaning body and his neck instantly. If you want to die so much, then go die. Sorata stared at Jin's quickly dim eyes, and spoke coldly. Then he swung the knife in his left hand to the left, swung the bloodline off the knife, and put the knife back into its sheath. Boom, Jin's body recovered quickly, and then fell down, following in Kaido's footsteps. Sorata turned around, looked at Kuina and Charlotte Linlin, and didn't pay much attention to Jin. The special race, in the special, is no different with him.